Chapter 2153, Victory. 3. Lung Xiao trembled with anger as he pointed at Shindizhuang with shaking fingers. The pretty girl doesn't lie? Let me tell you, the more beautiful the girls are, the more they will trick you, fool. Anger swelled up in Shun Dazhuang's heart. Did this person actually call him a fool just now? Was he really that foolish? Whatever. He would play the part of a fool then. Then, let this fool send you to your death. Shun Dazhuang released all his power in a single move. Lung Xiao knew that it was impossible for this idiot to give up and let him kill Su Luo, so he followed suit and countered. Bang, bang, bang. The strong powers of the two clashed in midair with a burst of tiny sparks, causing the mountain and the surrounding air to shake in the chaos. Although Su Luo's strength had improved greatly during this time, she briefly lost her footing and was swaying a bit. It was just like the saying, the bystander sees the most one. Su Luo noticed that although Lung Xiao was displaying a great amount of power, he wasn't actually exerting his full force. Shun Dazhuang, on the other hand, was truly putting in his greatest effort. Just as Shun Dazhuang weakened, Lung Xiao finally burst forward with a surprise attack. A transparent ball of light that had been prepared for a while now finally appeared in his hands and slammed into Shun Dazhuang's chest. Taking advantage of the stunned Shun Dazhuang, Lung Xiao followed this up with a sweep of his leg. Shun Dazhuang had managed to dodge the ball of light, but was hit hard by Lung Xiao's kick. For a moment, his legs were in so much pain that he fell to the ground unsteadily. How could Lung Xiao miss such a good opportunity? His figure soared up to the sky and then dropped to the ground sharply. With a sword, he went piercing toward Dazhuang's throat. The battle between the two strong opponents ended with this cold stab of a sword. Then Shun Dazheng dissipated into white light before he finally disappeared. Poor Shun Dazhuang. This time, all his efforts would be left for someone else too. His identity plate clattered onto the ground, and it would soon belong to either Lung Xiao or Su Luo. Su Luo had already ordered Big Sister Wei to snatch at the minute Lung Xiao killed Shun Dazhuang. So Big Sister Wei had been waiting so long in anticipation for this moment that even flowers had withered. Naturally, she was now extremely excited. Just as Lung Xiao killed Shun Dazhuang, Big Sister Wei charged forward like a hungry wolf and immediately crushed the lanky Lung Xiao underneath her like a great mountain. Lung Xiao was furious. Yet before he could react, Big Sister Wei had already made her move. Her wooden club didn't work well at such a close range, so she simply punched Lung Xiao's nose with her fists. Little Luo had said that it was one of the softest parts of the body and therefore the most painful area when hit right. Lung Xiao had been too overconfident, so how could he have expected Big Sister Wei to act so quickly? By the time he realized what was happening, her iron fist was already heading straight for his nose. Big Sister Wei's fists were more than just for show, and Lung Xiao's nose immediately bent crooked when the blow made contact, causing blood to gush out. Ow! Lung Xiao burst into tears of pain, but even as it hurt, he was still very much conscious and soon retaliated. With a punch, he smashed Big Sister Wei into the air. Yet, unbeknownst to him, Su Luo's sword had already arrived, stabbing a hole into his back. Lung Xiao was angered to the point of jumping up and down. "Hateful girl, you're seeking death." He threw Big Sister Wei to the side and charged towards Su Luo instead. His hatred for Su Luo had been slowly building up, and now it was flooding out like the endless waters of the Yellow River 3. However, he noticed something was wrong as soon as he took the first step. When he looked down, he saw that his leg was fine, but there was something wrong with the sole of his foot. Chapter 2154, Victory. 4. He had heard a chick sound that seemed to come from the soles of his feet. It was followed by sharp pain. "You!" Lung Xiao pointed his finger at Su Luo, furious at his inability to walk up and kill her right then and there. "Come here if you can." Su Luo folded her arms across her chest and smirked at Lung Xiao, who was still stuck in place. By now, she was absolutely certain that he was unable to approach her. The reality was so, and Lung Xiao could not take a single step. Furthermore, he couldn't even stand anymore. The corrosion had reached up to his calves. You are too cruel." Lung Xiao was so angry that he was almost coughing up blood. As with any conspiracy, it is not the mastermind that is to blame. Instead, you should blame yourself for being a fool. Su Luo raised her eyebrows with a grin. Does Shindazhuang know how stupid you are? This time, Leng Xiao truly spewed out a mouthful of blood. When did you set this trap? Leng Xiao found it hard to believe that it was a coincidence. She had planted a corrosive poison without his knowing and predicted where he would step. Su Luo swept her hair back and smiled coolly. It's very simple. While you were fighting with Shindazhuang, didn't I pick up those identity plates? I simply buried the trap then. Leng Xiao's breath caught in his throat. What kind of mind did this wretched girl have? She couldn't possibly have planned everything so carefully back then, right? No, it might have been even earlier. At that moment, Leng Xiao's mind suddenly lit up with an idea, noticing a slight clue from Su Luo's previous activity. You already planned up to this point from the moment you came in? Leng Xiao yelled at Su Luo. First, she had run to the deserted land in the east to set up an ambush. After hunting down more than a dozen identity plates, she deliberately released people to inform him and Shindazhuang before running away by herself to fight Shin Big Fool 1. Once she and Shin Big Fool both used up their strength, she ran back over here in order to re-establish her presence. What kind of scheming was this? It was too accurate. Every step had been calculated, and even every person's character had been taken into account. It was truly terrifying. A string of cold sweat trickled down Leng Xiao's forehead. At the same time, Leng Xiao's hatred towards Su Luo deepened yet again. He once more made up his mind that he could not let this girl live any longer. He had to kill her as soon as possible. Otherwise, after she matured, she would be even more skilled at scheming and stronger as well. How terrifying would that be? People could not be killed in the trial tower. So, Leng Xiao decided that after leaving the trial tower, he would bring a group of people with him to deal with this girl. In accordance with the postponement rules, he could become eligible to participate in the upstream mountain assessment this way. Now that he had made the decision to kill Su Luo after leaving this place, he didn't have to worry about her right now. So Leng Xiao stared at Su Luo with an expression of extreme pain and then nodded slightly to withdraw. Seeing Leng Xiao exit in a flash of light, Su Luo's mouth curled up slightly, silently complimenting Nangong Luoyun. Nangong Luoyun was attacking at a distance, yet he was able to strategically reach a decisive victory from thousands of miles away. How could a small fry like Leng Xiao overcome such a scheme? However, Su Luo didn't know that after leaving the tower, Leng Xiao was already recruiting and arranging troops. Su Luo and Sister Wei just happily picked up all the identity plates on the ground one by one. 1 plate, 2 plates, 3 plates. At this moment, the spectators watching from outside the tower gazed at Su Luo on the screen with great wonder and eyes full of admiration. She was far too awesome. Chapter 2155, Victory 5. Oh, heavens. There are only 2 of them left in the entire trial tower now. 98 people have already withdrawn. So what do you think? Goodness, is this not the easiest assessment in history? I'm not sure if it is the easiest, but I do know that this time, the victors put in the least effort to win. The girls are counting their nameplates. I bet their hands are about to cramp up from having to count so many. Countless sighs and countless gazes, they were all focused on Su Luo. After recounting the pieces 3 times, Su Luo finally confirmed that she had now gathered all the identity plates. 100 plates! This was the first success of this kind in the history of Midstream Mountain. Upon completing the task, Su Luo led Big Sister Wei out of the Tower of Trials. The thick and heavy vermilion doors slowly opened, and Su Luo stepped out leisurely. In the sunshine, she walked slowly, stunning everyone with her beauty. With those bright eyes and pearl-white teeth, skin fairer than fresh snow, and a graceful bearing that made her as elegant as jade, she was intoxicating to anyone who laid eyes on her. Her red outfit, which had big mandala flowers embroidered onto its cuffs and skirt, shone ravishingly. Under the bright and dazzling sunlight, her gorgeous face seemed to be covered in a faint glow. Su Luo was devastatingly beautiful and incomparably magnificent. The corners of her lips softly raised into a faint smile like that of a light breeze passing by. Then in an instant, her smile bloomed, becoming supremely exquisite like the sight of many great crimson lotuses in full flower. Such beauty! In person, Su Luo was 100 times more beautiful than on screen. Such a thin and delicately exquisite body had unexpectedly caused hundreds of mighty warriors in the midstream mountain to suffer in utter defeat, winning this competition. Although she had not won in much glory, she had done so with intelligence. People were always more lenient and understanding towards beautiful people and things. So, even though they had lost, they were willing to accept it. Among them, the whole group of people that Shen Dizhuang represented admitted that Su Luo's skills surpassed their own. Of course, there was still someone who was unconvinced, and that person was Leng Xiao. At this moment, Leng Xiao was staring at Su Luo with a dark and malicious gaze. Simultaneously, the corners of his lips raised into a strangely cold and cruel sneer, one that was profoundly mysterious and made others feel deeply uncomfortable. When Su Luo exited, she headed straight towards the guardian. This was a middle-aged woman who was even more like an abbess than Abbess Miju. Smiling nonchalantly, Su Luo said coolly and unhurriedly, "Where's the stone platform?" The eyes of Abbess Miju, number 2, flickered. She originally thought that Su Luo didn't know about this, so she didn't expect that Su Luo would ask about it the moment she came out. Under Su Luo's overbearing gaze, Abbess Miju number 2 clenched her fists. Su Luo's smile turned into a somewhat taunting smirk as she repeated, "Where is the stone platform?" At this moment, all eyes were on Abbess Miju number 2, gazing at her face. Meanwhile, Abbess Miju number 2 glanced at a different direction with the corners of her eyes. While following Abbess Miju's gaze, Su Luo's eyes happened to meet Leng Xiao's. Leng Xiao glared at her, but Su Luo just smiled calmly. The two people's auras immediately clashed in a battle of superiority. Leng Xiao suddenly shot a taunting sneer at Su Luo. Then, with a steady pace, he walked towards her slowly, step by step. Finally, he stood firmly in front of Su Luo, staring fixedly. Su Luo raised her fair and slender chin slightly, seemingly haughty yet carefree. Standing there with a posture that was neither servile nor overbearing, she let him gaze at her. "You want to draw lots?" Leng Zhao's cold voice rang out as he gazed at her icily. "You think you are qualified to draw them?" Su Luo wasn't angered and smiled instead. "I'm not qualified? Oh, don't tell me that you're the one who is qualified? You, a scum who was knocked out of the assessment?" Chapter 2156, Victory 6. Despite saying that, Su Luo knew that she wanted to draw lots this time. However, it was a little troublesome because Leng Xiao was the leader of this area, so his words held considerable weight. He gazed at Su Luo indifferently as his subordinates began to bombard her. "So, what if you're ranked number 1? Everyone knows how you got there. Aren't you embarrassed to be the first to take advantage of other people's loss?" Leng Zhao's subordinates were all filled with anger towards Su Luo. Their boss ranking had been stolen by this stupid girl. So how could they not be angry? Yet faced with the verbal attacks, Su Luo still smiled calmly. "Then what would you have me do? Not draw lots?" Leng Xiao glanced fiercely at Su Luo. "Draw lots? Sure, but I must be the one to do it." "And why should you?" Su Luo's eyes curved up almost like a smile. "It's just because I have bad luck." "Huh?" Leng Xiao suddenly burst into hysterical laughter, and the men behind him followed suit. Bad luck? So that was why he wanted to draw lots for Su Luo? For him to say such a thing so openly, Leng Xiao must truly be full of confidence about it. There was a large crowd of onlookers, but no one was willing to stand up and speak for Su Luo. Everyone looked at her with a smirk, as if waiting to see if she had any tricks up her sleeves. In their minds, if an ordinary young girl were bullied like this, she would definitely feel angry and helpless to the point of stomping her feet, right? They all expected the fairy-like girl to give in to the provocation, but Su Luo disappointed them. Instead, she continued to smile faintly like before, with her deep eyes seeming to look straight into the depths of Lung Zhao's soul. If you were to draw a prize, who would the treasure belong to? Lung Zhao looked at his rough hands and broke into a sly smile. If you want whatever trash I pull out, it will be yours. Ha! Standing behind their boss, Lung Zhao's subordinates laughed along with him. Well, if you want to draw them, you can. However, if you pull good things out, you can't be greedy. There are so many people here as witnesses, even Brother Shin. Isn't that right, Brother Shin? At that, Su Luo gestured at Shin Dazhuang. Shin Dazhuang had been beaten by Lung Zhao, so he was filled with hatred towards Lung Zhao rather than Su Luo. Therefore, upon hearing Su Luo say this, Shin Dazhuang stormed forward, puffed his chest out, and said to her, "Junior sister, do not worry. Let this senior brother Shin bear witness for you." Su Luo nodded with a smile. She had already planned this out earlier during the Tower of Trials. By having waited for Lung Zhao to eliminate Shin Dazhuang before eliminating Lung Zhao herself, Su Luo had technically avoided offending Shin Dazhuang. If she had offended both Lung Zhao and Shin Dazhuang, then she would have two enemies in Midstream Mountain, leaving her with no way out. When Lung Zhao heard Shin Dazhuang's words, he felt dizzy with anger. Thinking back to the Tower of Trials, Lung Zhao had called Shin Dazhuang an idiot then too. Indeed, this man was truly a fool. Shin Dazhuang clasped his arms together and stood behind Su Luo with his huge body, giving the impression that he was supporting her. "Draw the lots quickly. I want to sleep when this is finished." Shin Dazhuang shouted at Abyss Miju No. 2. Abyss Miju No. 2 glanced at Lung Zhao. Seeing his nod, she took out the stone platform. She had kept this stone platform for many years, and unless there was a system reward, it would not light up at all. Then Su Luo made a gesture of invitation towards Lung Zhao. "Boss Lung, if you please." Chapter 2157, Victory 7. Lung Zhao didn't make any other pauses. He just focused on dealing with the tasks and then clicked the button. Consequently, that clock-like disc spun quickly. Lung Zhao looked at Su Luo with a smile. "Wretched girl. When do you want me to press stop?" This was such an important lottery. Yet he appeared careless and did as he pleased, like he was merely picking cabbages and radishes. Everyone felt sorry for Su Luo and sighed. On the other hand, Su Luo still smiled indifferently as she said, "Whenever you want." When Lung Zhao failed to see the expression he'd been anticipating appear on Su Luo's face, a ruthless gaze flashed across his eyes. "Well then, I'll just press stop now." Before he finished talking, Lung Zhao's hand had already pressed the button. The screen went black. Soon after, under the eyes of everyone who wasn't expecting anything good to be drawn, Shin Dazhuang was the first to call out. "What the? Two? There are actually two. Quickly, let me through. Let me through. Let me see what they are." He quickly rushed up to the platform. When Shin Dazhuang saw the two items stated on the screen, he felt dizzy and struggled to stay standing. "What the? This must be a mistake. One is a Sunny Doll one, and the other Shindasha felt that either his eyesight had gotten worse or the world had gone crazy. Intelligent skull? Lung Zhao squeezed these two words from between his teeth. It unexpectedly turned out to be the intelligent skull. At this moment, Lung Zhao was in a total daze, and he looked down speechlessly at his rough and calloused hands. He had drawn quite a number of times previously, but he'd never gotten anything good. Yet this time, he actually drew such a good prize. Furthermore, it was not one, but two good prizes. Two. One of them was even the intelligent skull. Lung Zhao felt that his entire life's worth of luck had just been used for this moment. Then right when the bodies of Lung Zhao and Shin Dazhuang, as well as everyone else present, were shaking from their inability to ingest this huge piece of information, something unexpected happened. Su Luo, who had the strongest psychological endurance and big sister way, who felt no mental pressure at all, snatched the two treasures and teleported away, disappearing out of sight. Then Su Luo hurriedly threw the two treasures into her space. She would look into what that Sunny Doll was later, but just for that intelligent skull alone, Su Luo almost wanted to kneel down to Lung Zhao in praise. After that, Su Luo pulled Big Sister Wei in again for another teleportation, moving forward another mile or so. What a joke! With such a powerful treasure in their possession, if they didn't run, then they were just waiting to get robbed. Furthermore, they'd be robbed openly in broad daylight. After all, they were on Midstream Mountain where they were surrounded by enemy forces. Lung Xiao, that bastard, said beforehand that he would give her the prize he drew. That had been based on the thought that the reward would be rubbish. However, now, the prize was the intelligent skull. The intelligent skull? After Su Luo and Big Sister Wei had already teleported away for about a second, Shen Dezhuang finally snapped out of it. He scratched his bald head. Where have they gone? And the treasures? That's right. What happened to the treasures? Having been too preoccupied with staring at the words on the screen, no one realized that the treasures had already been spat out and then snatched away by Su Luo, disappearing altogether. The anger in Lung Zhao's heart, the rage he felt. At this moment, Lung Zhao's eyes were scarlet red, with the flames of two raging blazes flickering in his eyes. His whole body seemed to have been ignited by a fire, and he was now about to explode. Chapter 2158, Victory 8, Chase them, chase them, chase them for me. Lung Xiao shouted angrily as he shot forward with an explosive burst. Then, in a grandiose manner, Lung Xiao's people also joined the chase. As the people present watched Lung Xiao and the others fly out like arrows, it was only then that they recovered their spirits one by one. What the? The intelligent skull. That's the intelligent skull. What kind of luck does Bossling have today? It's overwhelming. Yet why was it that he only drew a prize of 10,000 points when he drew lots for himself previously? Moreover, he actually drew that prize of 10,000 points quite a few times in a row. Could it be that all of his past bad luck was just for today's good luck? But the prize he drew today was for Su Luo, not for himself. So, I really don't know what to say about that. If Bossling hadn't insisted on drawing lots for Su Luo, she wouldn't have gotten the intelligent skull. That's right, that's right. Bossling not only helped Su Luo in the Tower of Trials, but also in the lottery. What do you guys think? Does Boss Lung truly hate Su Luo? If he hates her, why does he end up helping her every time? Everyone. If Lung Xiao heard that hothead's words, he would have given the guy a thrashing. Just how exactly was Lung Xiao helping Su Luo? He had obviously attempted to harm Su Luo every time, but in the end, everything had gone against his wishes. He was even somewhat suspicious. Was the goddess of luck playing with him? At this time, Lung Xiao and his group hurried ahead. Lung Xiao was currently raging hysterically. He vowed that he absolutely had to kill Su Luo today. He just had to absolutely kill her. While running, Ding Yiling Zhao's capable assistant said, "Boss, don't worry. Earlier, Liao Er already took some men to wait in ambush up ahead at Sunset Forest. Going through there is the only way to get to Upstream Mountain. Perhaps that Su girl will have already been captured by Liao Er long before we get there." Li San nodded in agreement. "Boss, Ding Yi is right. Liao Er took 8 people with him and surrounded Sunset Forest. Once that Su girl enters, we'll wrap her up like wrapping a dumpling." The more Ding Yi thought about it, the more complacent he got. Sunset Forest is full of danger, and we even have hidden assassins there. This time, that Su girl will absolutely have a tragic end. With Ding Yi and Li San's explanation, Lung Zhao's initial rage gradually eased little by little. He threw his head back and howled loudly with laughter. "Good. Very good. Let's see where you'll run to this time, Su Luo." Yet could Liao Er really wait until Su Luo arrived? As a matter of fact, he truly did wait until then. Previously, Su Luo took Big Sister Wei with her and teleported all the way out. However, as the strong gravity was too strong here, Big Sister Wei couldn't bear teleporting more than a few times. So they ran quickly instead. Once they were out of Midstream Mountain, they could use Su Luo's golden airship, that nature-defying flying machine. With her golden airship, how could Su Luo be afraid of being chased by Lung Xiao? Nevertheless, Su Luo was thinking too simply of the situation. Although the golden airship flew at a fast speed, it still had a fatal weakness, and that was a weak defense. In front of the powerful Saint ranks, the defense of the golden airship was like a sheet of paper. Regardless, when Liao Air saw Su Luo finally leave Midstream Mountain and make a temporary stop in front of Sunset Forest, that was the moment a small golden ship suddenly appeared on her palm. Then that small ship gradually became bigger. Su Luo smiled at Big Sister Wei. Just wait. Once we're in the golden airship, we won't need to be afraid of being chased by Lung Xiao. The best result will be if we can anger him to death. Yes, yes. Big Sister Wei nodded repeatedly with a grin. After that, the two of them boarded the golden airship. Yet before the golden airship could take flight, an unforeseen event occurred. Chapter 2159, Trap 1. Although Liao Air was extremely shocked to see that Su Luo was about to fly away, he quickly came back to his senses. After all, how could he just let Su Luo leave like this? Thus, Liao Air hurriedly picked up the communication amulet and sent the news to Lung Xiao. Lung Xiao's brows knitted together tightly. What did you say? She has a golden airship? How did that vile wench obtain such a luxury item? Not even he had one, and as far as he knew, even the top 3 on the dragon list might not have one either. Liao Air spread his hands open as if to gesture. How would he know? Could it be that Su Luo truly has a really powerful backer supporting her? Boss, if so, Liao Air said with difficulty. If that is the case, we must kill her in extreme secrecy to avoid future troubles. Lung Xiao's tone was extremely firm. This was because he and Su Luo were already mortal enemies who wouldn't stop fighting until the other was dead. Furthermore, Lung Xiao's eyes lit up as he very quickly came to a realization. Yet he grit his teeth while saying, isn't her luck really good? She must have won the airship in the lottery. As soon as he mentioned the lottery, Lung Xiao felt a stifling sensation in his chest. He swelled up with so much anger that his chest began to throb with a dull ache. Now, I order you to force her into Sunset Forest and unconditionally stop her from going to Upstream Mountain. Lung Xiao knew that if they allowed this potential calamity to continue existing it would be as difficult as reaching the heavens to eliminate her once she became an established threat in the future. Yes, sir. Liao Air nodded solemnly. Boss, don't worry. The defense of the golden airship is not strong. All you need to do is just wait and see. After listening to Liao Air's words, Lung Xiao's mouth hooked into a sneer. That vile wench wanted to try to escape? Ha! This was reality. If he killed her, then she would really die. He would wait and see just how she was going to escape from his inescapable trap. Su Luo wasn't familiar with the map of Sunset Forest at all when she first arrived. However, Liao Air's group had wandered in it every day, so now they could practically walk right out of it with their eyes closed. Therefore, as long as they managed to force Su Luo into Sunset Forest, the monsters would be able to eat her alive. Even if there was a chance that she survived, he still had a dozen of his subordinates lying in wait. Su Luo would be left with no escape. Lung Xiao's newfound self-assuredness caused him to rush onto the Sunset Forest with a card up his sleeve. At this time, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei were sitting on the golden airship and were about to leave. Yet just as the golden airship began to rise, Su Luo sensed danger was approaching. Boom! A strong gust of wind hit the golden airship and threw it askew, causing it to almost fall down headfirst. Su Luo frowned slightly. This golden airship had good speed, but it was truly unsatisfactory in terms of defense. She finally stabilized the golden airship with some difficulty, but the other party had encircled them with a ring of wind blades. They tightened the circle continuously, with a resonating swishing sound. Su Luo knitted her eyebrows together tightly. She calculated that if the situation continued on like this, the golden airship would be cut to pieces by the wind blades within an hour, which wasn't something she wished to see. Although Su Luo clearly knew she was the one the other party was forcing off the golden airship, she had no choice but to bring Big Sister Wei down there with her. This was an overt plot. Just before the two of them exited the golden airship, another attack of wind and lightning slammed into it. Big Sister Wei was caught off balance momentarily and lost her footing. She suddenly hit the wall, causing a big bump to form on her forehead. She was instantly filled with anger, waving her big wooden club while charging out. Big Sister Wei shouted angrily, "Who is it that's looking to cause a fight? Show yourself to me." However, when Liao Air saw Big Sister Wei rush out, he immediately turned around and ran into Sunset Forest. If Liao Air hadn't run, he would have been immediately beaten up by Big Sister Wei, and she would let go of her anger. Nevertheless, the problem was that he retreated, so she had no means of venting her anger and thus fell for Liao Air's trap. She charged forwards while pointing with her big club. "What kind of evildoer dares to provoke me? I'm watching you." When Big Sister Wei charged forwards, Su Luo had the intention to stop her but wasn't even able to grasp onto the corner of her clothes. So Su Luo could only watch as Big Sister Wei ran into the distance. As Su Luo gazed at Sunset Forest, she furrowed her eyes deeply. However, she didn't have time to think about this right now, so she went chasing after Big Sister Wei. Much like the saying about how the gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall, Su Luo's character was one that would generally avoid, or at least try to avoid, a place like the forest, knowing it was dangerous. Despite that, there were two reasons preventing her from doing so. Firstly, Big Sister Wei had already rushed into the forest. Secondly, their intended destination was the upstream mountain, and this was the only way to get there. The golden airship couldn't fly over it, so that meant they could only get there by walking on land. Su Luo looked at the thicket jungle, and her eyes darkened. Her sixth sense told her that there were countless dangers waiting for her in this forest. Meanwhile, Liao Air was moving things along very quickly. Utilizing his familiarity with the terrain, he was able to let Big Sister Wei follow him closely without letting her catch him. Simultaneously, he was able to run while reporting their progress to Lung Xiao. Boss, the ant nest will soon be in front of us." Liao Air's voice had a hint of excitement. The ant nest, as the name implied, meant a nest of ants. And it were millions of bee ants, and these bee ants were known in Sunset Forest for being barbaric, even on normal days. So even Lung Xiao would avoid them. Good. The ant nest. Huh? Receiving this news put Lung Xiao in a good mood. At this hour, the bee ants were usually all gathered in their nest to rest. If anyone dared to disturb them, they would definitely face death. Liao Air was rather smart. Knowing that he would be defeated if he fought alone, he had set up this strategy in advance. "Boss, as a subordinate, I must help you kill that vile wench and assist you in getting revenge." Liao Air slapped his chest proudly, with an emotional expression of someone who would die for his friend. "Okay, you can go. It's up to you to set this predicament right," Lung Xiao said sternly. Putting down the communication amulet, Liao Air looked back at Big Sister Wei, who was still relentlessly chasing after him, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He cursed inwardly. "Idiot, follow me and see how you'll die this time." Liao Air dodged here and there as he dashed forward. Following his trail, Big Sister Wei shouted furiously and increased her speed. However, because she was unfamiliar with the terrain, the distance between them did not decrease. In order to go to Upstream Mountain, it was necessary to traverse Sunset Forest, which was full of mountains. Liao Air's direction was leading towards Su Luo's intended destination, so she did not deliberately attempt to stop Big Sister Wei. An hour later, a mysterious sneer suddenly appeared at the corners of Liao Air's mouth. Then his figure flashed, and he quickly jumped onto a 1,000-year-old tree and concealed himself there. Very quickly, Big Sister Wei caught up to him, but Liao Air had already disappeared, and she couldn't seem to find him no matter how hard she searched. Big Sister Wei had originally been holding in her anger, but as she came farther and farther in her pursuit, she became increasingly suffocated by her anger. Just as she was about to have the chance to vent her anger, she found that Liao Air had disappeared. This made her anger soar again, and she felt as if her lungs were about to blow up. "Jerk, come out and show yourself to me." Big Sister Wei yelled loudly, waving her big wooden club. On the tree, Liao Air was overcome with joy. The corners of his mouth were stretched in a wide grin, almost reaching the base of his ears. He made a fist and silently encouraged Big Sister Wei in his heart. "Scream. Hurry up and scream louder." Yell at the ant nest until the ants storm out. Chapter 2160. Trap 2. The hive's activity stretched over quite an expansive area. Within a 100-mile radius, they were considered to reign supreme. Normally, you wouldn't be able to see them, but if something disturbed them, not even bones would be left behind. They were terrible, just terrible. At this time, Big Sister Wei wasn't at all aware of anything else. She just continued stomping her feet in anger and shouting constantly. Liao Air clenched a fist and danced excitedly. Hurry up and shout louder. Scream louder. This exact place was the very center of the hive. A large number of bee ants lived in the area under the feet of Big Sister Wei, and this was the hour of the bee ants' mating cycle. If their mating was interrupted, then they'd be extremely angry. Now that Big Sister Wei was stomping and shouting, this would disturb the atmosphere of their mating. Liao Air trembled with excitement, feeling as if he wished to beat up Big Sister Wei simply for those bees' sake. As Su Luo reached that area, she noticed that something was clearly wrong. This person had deliberately lured them here and then purposefully disappeared. Su Luo held the little purple sable in her arms as she stood still, stroking the soft fur of the little sable. The little purple sable's nose was very sensitive, and it soon smelled the abnormalities in the air. Then its small paw pointed to the location of the central tree. It was a 1,000-year-old tree. The tree's massive trunk could have been embraced by nearly 20 people. For the height of the tree towered into the sky as far as the eye could see, and the top was so far up that it was out of sight. However, the tree was very dry and stood very conspicuously in the midst of this leafy, sunset forest. Such an ancient tree shouldn't have survived. Why was it still able to stand for thousands of years? And the little purple sable had said that the strongest scent was from the tree. Su Luo approached it steadily, full of curiosity. Although the 1,000-year-old tree was a distance away, as soon as Liao Air saw Su Luo, his whole body began to tremble with excitement, and his cheeks flushed bright red. Perfect! He had still been pondering on how to lure Su Luo to the tree. He hadn't expected that Su Luo, in fact, would head towards it herself. It seemed that even the gods were helping him. At this time, the communication amulet sounded. Liao Air picked up and saw that it was the boss. Before Lung Xiao could ask, Liao Air had already lowered his voice and excitedly reported what had happened with incoherent words. Boss, boss. Right now, the vile wench with the Su name is walking towards the big tree in the middle of the bee ant nest. She's close, still 30 meters away. 20 meters, 10 meters, 5 meters. The excitement. His fists were clenched tightly, and faces blushed with anticipation. 3 meters, 2 meters. Liao Air's words became increasingly incoherent as he was excited that he was nearing a great achievement. He continued reporting the latest progress to his boss, Lung Xiao, who followed along, listening closely. He clearly remembered how terrible the ancient tree had been. At the beginning, they hadn't known anything, leaning on the big central tree to rest. However, they had disturbed the mating of the queen bee inside. The consequences, Lung Xiao thought about it and felt a shiver down his back. At that time, they had had a group of 10 of them, but only the 2 of them, he and Liao Air, had escaped. What about the rest? The rest had been swallowed up by the bee ant army, summoned by the queen and her bees. Not only were their entire bodies consumed, not even a single strand of hair or bone remained. So terrifying. As Lung Xiao thought about Su Luo, that vile wench, about to die without a place to be buried, his entire body bubbled with excitement. He sped up his pace and hurried towards Liao Air. She's about to die, about to die. Liao Air kept his gaze fixed on Su Luo's steps, concentrating in excitement while holding his breath. He didn't dare to take a breath of air, lest he miss the moment of her death. Soon, he took in a breath of air because Su Luo had stopped. She was still 1 meter away from the ancient tree at the center, when she stopped just before it. Liao Air's heartbeat felt as if it was suspended in place, unable to beat at all, and his gaze remained fixed on Su Luo, wishing with all his might that he could nudge her towards it. Just when Liao Air was considering ways to force Su Luo towards it, Su Luo began walking forward again. This was good. All was going well. Only one more step was left. Go on, you could do it. Liao Air clenched his fists, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at Su Luo's back hard enough to burn a hole into it. Meanwhile, in the communication amulet, there was a cold and impatient voice waiting on the other side. Boss! Liao Air lowered his voice, for fear of being discovered by Su Luo. What? Lung Zhao's voice was slightly uncontrolled with traces of excitement. The last step. It's the last step. Very soon, Liao Air said firmly. She has lifted her foot, stepped on it, stepped on. However, at this very moment Su Luo frowned. She was actually communicating right then and there with the little purple sable in her head. What's in it? The little purple sable scratched his head. I don't know, but it seems to be very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Are you sure you want to see it? The corner of Su Luo's mouth slowly curved into a smile, and when she was just one step away from reaching the ancient central tree, she directed her footsteps away and went right around the tree, pulling Big Sister Wei with her and walking straight. Liao Air. He watched Su Luo walk away without a single glance back, and his entire body felt as if he had been suddenly struck by lightning. He stood there stupidly, motionless, feeling as if he could no longer hear what was happening around him. In the communication amulet, Lung Zhao's uncontrollably excited voice continued to make itself heard. Has she stepped on it? Did she step on it? Liao Air. Hurry up! Has she stepped on it? Lung Zhao was anxious. If Liao Air had been in front of him at this time, he would have definitely kicked him without a doubt. Huh! At this time, was that vile winch being chased by the queen bee and queen's bee? Did the entire hive come out? Are there any bones left from being chewed up? Lung Zhao imagined the scenario in his mind by himself. The scene he painted for himself suddenly became so exciting. Liao Air. Facing the boss's passionate excitement, Liao Air burst into tears at this time. He swallowed deeply, pondering about how to word his news for a moment, and finally, hesitatingly reported the situation. Boss, boss, boss. Don't get too excited. Don't get excited, things have changed. Lung Zhao suddenly felt as if his acupuncture points had been pressured, and his advancing footsteps suddenly stiffened from his subconscious reaction. What? Liao Air almost cried. Boss Shishi, if you have something to say to me, then straighten out your tongue and just say it. Lung Zhao gritted his teeth, squeezing out word by word through his teeth. Just say it. Liao Air felt his scalp grow numb, took a deep breath, and mustered up the courage, saying all in one breath. Boss. That vile wench didn't step on the central tree. She didn't step on it. She just turned and left. Liao Air. Chapter 2161. Trap 3. Liao Air felt the silence set in from the other side of the communication amulet. He could only feel that his scalp was numb, his entire body was cold, and his back was stiff. Lung Zhao's cold, indifferent voice spoke slowly word by word, gritting his teeth together, repeating, She ran away. Yeah. She's not dead? No. Then kill yourself for me. Lung Zhao was furious. Angry. He roared wildly and smashed the communication amulet to the ground. Liao Air. Liao Air really wanted to die. He knew that facing his boss in this kind of situation meant it would definitely not end well. He slapped himself fiercely, sobered himself, and then reconnected to the boss. Lung Zhao was about to go crazy from anger. She had actually avoided it. How could this stinky girl's luck be so good? How could this be? If Liao Air hadn't been gushing with such excitement before, Lung Zhao would not be so angry. Liao Air's words had set up a lot of expectations, so with these results, he felt like Liao Air had sent him from heaven to hell. This enormous sense of disappointment was only fuel for the flames of revenge in his heart. He picked up the communication amulet from the ground and mustered the courage to pass it back to Lung Zhao, saying with a trembling voice, Boss, it's Liao Air. Lung Zhao gave Ding a fierce look. Ding Yi gathered up the courage again. Boss, maybe Liao Air still has a way. The communication amulet continued to flash, blinding people's eyesight. Lung Zhao clenched his fists, eventually deciding to listen to Ding Yi this once. Boss, I swear, I will definitely help you kill her. Liao Air raised the 4 fingers of his right hand, swearing righteously. Lung Xiao had already calmed down by this time. He grit his teeth and said, "If there is another time, just send yourself to your death." Okay. After receiving the order, Liao Air's heavy heart with worry had lifted. He began to cheer up again. The boss had given him a chance, so he had to make good of it. These 2 people had to be killed this time. Thinking of this, Liao Air quickly followed Su Luo's footsteps. No matter how fast Su Luo and Big Sister Wei walked, they weren't as familiar with this area as Liao Air. As they traveled over more and more land, they were soon enough catching up to Liao Air. This time, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei were in front, and Liao Air was behind. Liao Air kept wondering what should be done. How could these 2 people be killed silently and without leaving any traces? Soon, his eyes flashed with a bright light. Not far from the front is the labyrinth, the Asna Forest Labyrinth. After entering this maze, everyone would feel that they were spinning in place and wouldn't be able to get out. He and the boss had entered once. That time, they had wandered around for 3 months. That was 3 months long. Liao Air's eyes flashed a brilliant ray. In only 3 more days, let alone 3 months, the assessment of the upstream mountain would end. It would be over for these girls. Thinking of this, Liao Air firmly clenched his fist and decided to lure Su Luo into it. But how could he lure them in? What could he use as bait? After thinking it through, Liao Air thought it was better to use himself as a bait. So, taking advantage of the terrain, he went around the trail to take a shortcut. In a quarter of an hour, he was already in front of Su Luo and Big Sister Wei. As soon as Big Sister Wei saw Liao Air's figure, she became angry, holding a big wooden club and chasing after him, then saying, Yes, you. Stand still for this lady right now." Big Sister Wei was filled with excitement. She believed that she was finding him and chasing him. It turned out now he was right in front of her. Su Luo frowned and pulled Big Sister Wei. "No, you can't chase it. That's just bait. If you try to chase after him again, you may stray to the wrong path." Su Luo's current direction was to advance straight to northward. She didn't have a map in her hand, so this method was the most effective. Although Big Sister Wei was not happy, she pouted but still obediently followed Su Luo's words. Seeing that Big Sister Wei did not chase after, Liao Air instantly became anxious. He scratched his ears and thought of how to entice Big Sister Wei to chase after him. Based on the IQ and personality of Big Sister Wei, he came up with a solution after some consideration. Provocation. With just some gentle provocation, this Big Sister Wei would explode as if she had eaten an explosive. Bang! A pine cone hit Big Sister Wei's head. Big Sister Wei became agitated. Bang! Another pine cone hit Big Sister Weir's head. Big Sister Wei was so angry that she swung her hand out. Bang! Another pine cone slammed into the towering chest of Big Sister Wei. Big Sister Wei was infuriated inside. She grinned and then suddenly glared. Bang! As Big Sister Wei passed by a 1,000-year-old tree, one after another pine cones sprinkled from the top of the tree like rain onto her. "I can't bear it anymore." Big Sister Wei waved a big club around. Like an arrow from the string of a bow, she rushed forward, so fast that Su Luo wasn't able to stop her. In the blink of an eye, Big Sister Wei's figure disappeared. Su Luo shook her head helplessly and chased after her. Since she had received the loyalty of Big Sister Wei, she had to also accept her low IQ as well. So, Su Luo was helpless, but not angry. Moreover, Su Luo was also very interested in the hidden puppet master behind the scenes and wanted to see him. Perhaps she could take advantage of the forest terrain to kill Lung Xiao. At the same time, Liao Air was extremely happy. His agile legs propelled him forwards quickly, and he occasionally looked back towards Big Sister Wei. When he saw pine cones and straws and other messy things on top of Big Sister Wei's head, he nearly burst out with laughter. "Ha ha! Too funny, too stupid, too foolish." Liao Air was extremely excited about being able to fool Big Sister Wei. Liao Air's element was wind, so he specialized in being quick. He was not that far behind Lung Zhao's level. Even if Big Sister Wei desperately chased after him, she wouldn't be able to get closer to him. By now, the sun had already moved to the west, and night was gradually falling. Su Luo's eyebrows creased slightly. Logically speaking, if Lung Xiao had sent someone here to chase her, they would have caught up to her by now. However, she saw none. There had to be some kind of a plot against her. Thinking of the man who had played tricks on Big Sister Wei, Su Luo had a sly smile in her eyes. She, on the other hand, wanted to know where that person would take them. As the goal drew near, Liao Er's mind was filled with anticipation. Last time, I let you escape danger. This time, I will definitely leave you dead without a funeral. I'll lead you into the labyrinth of Asna Forest and starve to death in it. Liao Er fiercely clenched his hand into a fist. Ahead was the Asna Forest labyrinth. The majestic Western-style architecture filled people with wonder. Now Liao Er was really going all out. He knew just curiosity was not enough. People always had the mentality of seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages. If Su Luo was afraid, she would definitely not come in. At this moment, only anger could ignite the ambition to enter. Chapter 2162. Trap 4. Therefore, Liao Er decided to use himself as a bait to lure Big Sister Wei in. As long as she entered, Su Luo would definitely follow. Liao Er stopped at the entrance of the Asna Forest labyrinth to make sure that Big Sister Wei saw him there. And then he rushed in without a single glance back. Sure enough, eager to catch Liao Er, Big Sister Wei dashed in without a thought. Su Luo felt helplessly looking at it. She felt that Big Sister Wei's impulsive actions had to be corrected, or else they would be exploited by the enemy next time. If she wasn't there to protect her, she was afraid that Big Sister Wei would encounter misfortune. After entering, Liao Er found that Big Sister Wei and Su Luo had followed him in. This instantly excited him. Immediately, Liao Er used the communication amulet to connect to Lung Xiao. Liao Er continued to run further, unable to hide his excitement, and reported his progress to Lung Xiao. Boss. Boss. They entered. They entered. Liao Er spoke incoherently, but Lung Xiao understood exactly what he was talking about. They really entered? Lung Xiao's mood was instantly lifted. Anticipating the pleasure of revenge, he smiled. Yeah, boss, these two stupid women really followed me in? Ha ha. Liao Er couldn't help but laugh out loud, relishing the great contribution he had made. Good, good, very good. Remember, trap them alive in the maze of Asna Forest. Lung Xiao laughed fiercely. When one hated another to great extremes, the pleasure of ending that other person with a sword for revenge was temporary. However, if one schemed to make the other party wish they were dead rather than alive, because that party was suffering a slow, painful death, not for a moment or for a day, not even for a month, but until the end of time. That was truly the greatest manifest of revenge. As long as Su Luo was trapped in the maze of Asna Forest, she would be like a beast that was confined with nothing to eat or drink. No matter what she did, she would only end up walking circles around the maze. She would experience first physical exhaustion, then mental insanity, and finally a mental breakdown. Ha! Lung Xiao pictured this scene with great enjoyment, letting his imagination run wild. Yes, sir. After receiving his boss's approval, Liao Er smiled exultantly. By now, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei had already entered the maze of Asna Forest. As soon as they entered the maze, they would automatically be trapped within the formation. It was difficult to get out. From the moment he entered, Liao Er had carefully remembered the distance between himself and the gate. At this moment, he didn't dare to stay any longer in the maze of Asna Forest. His only intention now was to sneak out and leave. Just as he was about to sneak out through the gate, boom, a brutal kick hit Liao Er from the other side, sending his body flying back through the gate like an arrow. Liao Er was so angry that he almost spat out blood. It wasn't because he was kicked, it was just purely out of anger. Why? He didn't know what hour in the evening it was, and had forgotten the distance, and how far he flew back due to that kick. Moreover, at this instant, the formation of the entire maze of Asna Forest changed drastically. Liao Air couldn't even cough up blood at this time. Why? Because as far as Liao Air knew, the Asna Forest Labyrinth would automatically change its formation every 6 hours. After the change, all the timings and locations would change, and the clock would start again. This was what his boss had said. For them to be able to escape before, it was due to all the calculations made step by step by his boss. But now, after he had been forced back in, how would he get out? Liao Air became very anxious. He was filled with so much urgency, he felt as if he was about to cry. At this time, Su Luo maintained her undisturbed smile, calm as wind. Big Sister Wei charged forwards to kill Liao Air. However, instead, what she saw was the sky spinning before her eyes and Liao Air being sucked into somewhere. Big Sister Wei stood stunned in place, frozen still with a look of confusion and suspicion on her face. She became startled and upset. Su Luo smiled, patting her shoulder. "All right, don't be angry, that person was drawn into the formation. It will be difficult for him to escape from it in this life. He'll die by himself?" This was Big Sister Wei's understanding of it. Something like that. If he couldn't escape, he would be trapped inside for a lifetime. Wasn't that equivalent to dying? So Su Luo nodded in agreement. Listening to Su Luo's words, Big Sister Wei was relieved and softly spat out a few words in the direction of Liao Air's disappearance. "Let you off easy." Su Luo smiled and shook her head. In fact, he hadn't been let off easily at all. If he had been caught by Big Sister Wei, at worst he would only receive a few blows and then get tossed aside. Now that he had disappeared into the maze, his future didn't look promising. Su Luo, having the time to be concerned with others, showed that she was not at all worried about the maze of Asna Forest. In fact, this was very true. Ever since picking up Little Purple Sable from the secret dragon territory, mazes and other obstacles were mere trifles to Su Luo. The Little Purple Sable had been born inside a maze, so it had a natural path-finding instinct. Su Luo held Little Purple Sable and fed it with slices of roasted meat while coaxing it to lead the way. She had to leave the maze quickly, as the assessment of the upstream mountain was set to begin in a day. She definitely didn't want to miss it. Little Purple Sable was being coaxed very easily. Su Luo scratched his chin teasingly. He giggled, then very mightily sat on Su Luo's shoulder to point out the right direction. With the help of Little Purple Sable, the originally difficult labyrinth became very simple for Su Luo. She easily made her way through as if walking leisurely in her own manor's courtyard. On the other side, Lung Xiao had already reached the entrance of the maze. However, he did not enter. With his hands folded behind his back, he gazed at the European-style maze of Asna Forest with a cold smile, thinking of Su Luo being trapped inside. "Come on, set up a comfortable tent for me to stay in. I want to watch this properly right here." Lung Xiao waved his hand and gave the order. Immediately, his subordinates moved to obey his command. Those setting up the table set up the table. Those placing the chairs placed out the chairs. Those setting up the tent set up the tent. The round wooden table was covered with a scarlet silk cloth, which lively colors carried a cheerful, lively feeling. The chair was constructed from yellow rosewood with arms covered in soft cushions. Sitting on it and leaning back, it was extremely comfortable. One would feel like they were laying in the sand. A small red clay stove to the side had been lit, and the boiling water was steaming. Lung Zhao's people were busily making preparations. They knew that their boss was likely to stay here for a long time. Therefore, the more luxurious, the better. The more luxurious things he enjoyed, the more satisfaction he got, thinking of the harsh conditions Su Luo was being forced to endure. Through experience and knowing what the superior wanted, these subordinates quickly finished setting up a magnificent tent nicely. Lung Xiao comfortably leaned back into his armchair, crossing his legs and toying with the communication amulet in his hand. After some time had passed, he couldn't bear waiting anymore, so he connected to Liao Air. Chapter 2163. Trap 5. Why haven't you come out yet? Lung Xiao frowned. According to their plan, after Liao Air had lured Su Luo and Big Sister Wei in, he would jump out of the maze. He himself had suffered greatly inside, and so he knew very well the horrors of the maze of Asna Forest. Liao Er's voice carried with it traces of crying. Boss, ah. At that moment, Lung Xiao had a very bad premonition. His back stiffened, and he sat upright, his voice cold. Failed again? His face looked as if it were to explode in the next moment. His subordinates all stopped working. No one dared to move, hesitantly raising their ears to listen. No, no, no. Liao Er quickly denied it, but then cried pitifully. Boss, they are in here too, but I have trapped myself in the maze. Please save me. Even as Lung Xiao let out a sigh of relief, he wished he could kick Liao Er. Idiot. Yes, yes, boss, my lowly self is such a fool. However, this fool is now desperate. What should I do? Liao Er's face was full of tears. Why was he so incompetent as to land himself here? After all, Liao Er worked under him. Lung Xiao knew that if he ignored Liao Er, it would chill the hearts of the others, so he could only frown impatiently. Okay. Wait for me. I'll get you out of there once I get this figured out. Thank you, boss. Thank you. Liao Er was so excited. He knew that the boss would never leave him. The boss was so kind. Are you certain Su Luo and the others are in the maze? Lung Xiao asked with a bit of worry. He couldn't seem to get rid of a bad premonition, as if there was something he was missing here. Yes, absolutely. If I lied, I want the boss to never leave me behind in the maze of Asna Forest. Liao Er swore. All right. Lung Xiao couldn't find anything amiss anywhere, so he grunted, hung up on Liao Er's side, and then ordered the people guarding the other 3 sides to come back to where he was. Because Su Luo was right in front of them in the maze of Asna Forest, there was no need for them to stand guard anywhere else. Lung Xiao just stood guard at the gate of the maze. He wasn't really doing anything other than leisurely crossing his legs and staring at the door of the labyrinth triumphantly. There, he sat for an entire 2 hours. Suddenly, Lung Xiao's communication amulet sounded. It was Zhao Si. Lung Xiao had been fantasizing about the kind of misery Su Luo was experiencing, the kind of hunger, and the kind of psychological breakdown she would soon be subject to. As he daydreamed happily, he was suddenly interrupted by the communication amulet. A frown spread across his face, and he answered it unhappily. Although he accepted the call, his tone was very huffy. Speak! Lung Zhao's voice was full of anger. Zhao Si's anxious voice came from the amulet. Boss, I just saw that wretched girl Su Luo. Bah! Lung Xiao, unable to hold it in, laughed out loud, and immediately denied, You saw wrong. Su Luo was trapped in the maze of Asna Forest while Zhao Si was coming from the north. How could he have possibly seen her? Zhao Si was too muddled. However, Zhao Si said with a firm sense of urgency, Boss, I'm not lying to you. I really did see Su Luo. She has a very beautiful appearance. There's no way I could have seen wrong. And that person next to her who wears colorful clothes and is stronger than normal men, big sister way. There's no mistake. Lung Xiao frowned, and his mouth hung open, suddenly at a loss of what to say. At this moment, he had a sudden flash of inspiration, and a piece of information that had been long forgotten in the depths of his memory jumped into his mind. In order to understand Su Luo's strength, he had personally investigated the footage of Su Luo's assessment during Genius Training Camp. There had been an exam that included a maze. He remembered that Su Luo had escaped from it very quickly. Remembering this, Lung Xiao felt his heart skip a beat. He knew what the problem was. The maze of Asna Forest couldn't hamper her at all. She, perhaps because of some treasure she possessed, had an advantage in understanding mazes. This was the only possibility. Lung Xiao promptly stood up, his entire body tense, and yelled in anger at Zhao Si. Quick! Stop her! You must stop her! Su Luo held Lung Zhao's coveted intelligent skull in her hands, and he would not allow any more mistakes to happen in this matter. If Su Luo reached the upstream mountain, where else would he be able to seize it from her? Lung Xiao rushed forward as he ordered his men around. It was ruined. All ruined. He hadn't realized that Su Luo, that wretched girl, was immune to mazes. His subordinates, seeing their boss overcome with anxiety, stood stupefied for a second, as if they had been struck by lightning. Then, coming back to their senses, they hurriedly packed all their belongings and chased after their boss. At that moment, Lung Zhao's communication amulet rang. When he saw that it was Liao Air, anger immediately boiled within his heart. "Boss, did you figure things out yet?" Liao Air asked weakly. He was afraid that the boss would forget about him because he was busy, so he especially made sure to remind him. "Don't move an inch. Let me tell you, Su Luo escaped from the maze long ago, while you idiot are still circling around in it. I'll remember this grudge, so don't you dare die. When I'm finished, I'll come back and tear your skin off." Lung Xiao yelled, venting at the communication amulet. He was so angry that the overflowing rage he felt inside almost scorched him. Su Luo had really escaped. Really already escaped. After hearing Liao Air, that idiot's words, however, he had actually just stood guard idiotically at the door of the maze of Asna Forest, waiting there like a fool. So much time had been wasted. If it weren't for Liao Air, that fool, he would have already caught up to Su Luo and killed her, and there would have even been enough time to deal with the body. Lung Xiao roared furiously in his heart and rushed forward as fast as if he were flying. The road ahead of him was blocked by the maze of Asna Forest, so Lung Xiao had to make a detour, and the distance he had to travel was lengthened even further. Also, Su Luo already had an hour's head start, so if he wanted to catch up to her, it would take a great deal of time. Lung Xiao also knew that it would be difficult for him to catch up with Su Luo like this, so he pinned all his hopes on Zhao Si. "The three of you, you have to stop that wretched girl. Even if you die doing it, you have to stall for time, understand?" Zhao Si nodded excitedly. "Boss, the ancient ruins are not too far up ahead. How about we lure that girl Su there?" "Good." Lung Xiao agreed excitedly. The ancient ruins ahead appeared very worn over time, and at glance it looked like a place filled with treasures. Many people had traveled there to explore, only to discover that the treasures inside had long been emptied out by others. If Su Luo passed by, she would definitely be intrigued into going in and taking a look. When she entered, the gate would be set off and it would close on her. Wouldn't that wretched girl then be locked in? Chapter 2164 Fatal Blow 1. The more Lung Xiao thought about this, the more excited he became, and he repeatedly ordered Zhao Si, "Be sure to lure that stinky girl in." Understood? The ancient ruins were very different from the maze of Asna Forest. There were 2 doors in the front and the back, and only 1 exit. As long as he guarded that 1 exit, wouldn't this be the equivalent of closing the door to hit the one? Understood. Zhao Si was as excited as a scholar who died for it too. It had to be said that Zhao Si did possess some talent, and he really did lure Su Luo towards that road. What methods had he used? It was very simple. He consulted Liao Air, who with a face full of snot and tears, confessed his entire plan to lure out Big Sister Wei to Zhao Si. After attaining Liao Air's plans, a weight was lifted off Zhao Si's chest. If Liao Air could trick that stupid Big Sister Wei, why couldn't he? He was much smarter than Liao Air. So, what kind of idea did Zhao Si come up with? Zhao Si had a demonic beast pet in his possession. He used the demonic beast pet to deliberately provoke Big Sister Wei, then quickly fled so that she would chase after the pet. At that time, Big Sister Wei was starting to hunger. That plump flying pig was nothing but a greasy roasted suckling pig, so she chased after it vigorously. The demonic beast pet took this opportunity to lure Big Sister Wei to the gate of the ancient ruins. Seeing the barren scene of the ruined walls, Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. What was going on today? Why were there traps everywhere? First, it was the nest of bees, then the maze of Asna Forest, and now the ancient ruins in front of her. It appeared desolate, but didn't it hint at great treasures? In the depths of Su Luo's eyes, there was the slightest hint of a cold smile. The flying pig had already been beaten to death by Big Sister Wei. Then, according to the little purple sable, this flying pig was a spiritual pet, not a wild monster. Its motive of leading them was obvious. Using simple deduction, it was very likely that Lung Xiao had deliberately lured them over with this demonic beast pet. Then, following the same reasoning, One could conclude that Lung Xiao had long known of the existence of this ancient site. Given Lung Xiao's character, how could he not go in and explore? If there were any treasures inside, he would have already emptied them out for himself, leaving nothing for her. Therefore, Su Luo held no interest at all towards the ancient ruins. How would Zhao Si have been able to guess what Su Luo's thoughts were at that moment? At this time, he was lying in ambush by the door, eyes rolling in anticipation, expecting Su Luo to rush in greedily. However, Su Luo stopped at the door, and when he saw the dark smile in her eyes, Zhao Si's hair stood on end. Seeing Su Luo directly turn around to leave, Zhao Si was instantly furious. He had expended so much effort to trick them here. How could she just leave like that? Absolutely not. In a rush of anxiety, Zhao Si had no time to think. He untied the transparent crystal from his waist and held it to the sunlight. Under the sunlight, the crystal reflected a particularly dazzling light, and Zhao Si directed this light towards Su Luo. Su Luo hadn't even said a word, but Big Sister Wei was already voicing her surprise. Treasure! Little Luo, there must be treasures inside. Let's go in. Big Sister Wei started pulling Su Luo towards the inside. Su Luo. Was the level of intelligence of the person inside really comparable to that of Big Sister Wei? Zhao Si instantly raised his eyebrows and secretly said to himself, "Damn, these two idiots turned out to be so gullible." However, he hadn't yet had the time to triumph. He had already lost sight of Su Luo and Big Sister Wei, who went ahead of him. Before he could even feel surprised, he saw a shadow suddenly charge towards him. A split second later, a huge fist struck his forehead fiercely. Bang, bang, bang. Poor Zhao Si had no chance to react at all before he had been beaten into a big pig's 3 by Big Sister Wei. His whole body was black and blue, and soon there wasn't a single patch of skin left intact. At last, Big Sister Wei set her foot on his back, bent down, and grabbed a handful of his hair to lift his head. "Speak! Was that flying pig yours?" Zhao Si was dumbfounded. How had he been exposed? When was he exposed? How did he not know? "You are really stupid, going so far as to sacrifice your own demonic beast pet only for us to find you and then kill you? Do you really want to die this badly?" Su Luo, with her arms crossed, stood loftily in front of Zhao Si, looking down at him with a smile. Zhao Si burst into tears. The situation was not supposed to end up like this at all. "Okay." Su Luo slowly squatted down in front of Zhao Si so that her eyes were level with him, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. "Since you want to glorify yourself so much, we might as well fulfill your wish." "No, no." Zhao Si wanted to cry for help, but Big Sister Wei bashed him on the head, and he immediately lost consciousness. Su Luo glanced coldly at Zhao Si, who had collapsed to the ground, and then searched his body. Sure enough, she found a map of the Sunset Forest. With this map, everything would be much easier. Su Luo felt that dragging things out like this wasn't a way to defeat Lung Xiao. She had to take the initiative to kill him in the Sunset Forest. Otherwise, things would be very troublesome in the future. Looking carefully at the map, Su Luo squinted her eyes. From midstream mountain to downstream mountain, she had been essentially traversing the Sunset Forest. Under Lung Xiao's deliberate guidance along the way, she was not traveling on a straight-line route. Instead, she had been gradually turning towards the southwest. Then, if she crossed the southwest, Su Luo followed the map and found her finger pointed towards a section of blood-red forest. This was a part of the Blood Mist Forest. On the map, a big cross was marked, from the nest of bees and ants to the maze of Asna Forest, and now the ancient ruins. Bright red crosses were drawn on every location, so the Blood Mist Forest had to be Lung Xiao's killing move. Because that was where the 4th red cross was. Su Luo stuffed the map back onto Zhao Si's body, then led Big Sister Wei outside. "We're not killing him?" Big Sister Wei asked. "No killing. Killing would alarm the rest of the enemy." "Oh." Big Sister Wei didn't question anymore. Su Luo gazed first at the sky, then at the jungle in front of her before giving a few orders to Big Sister Wei. "I won't." Big Sister Wei resisted her for the first time, because Su Luo was actually having her go ahead first. Su Luo gave her an unhappy glance. Why not? I'll compete with you. You go from there, I'll go from here, and we'll see who gets out of this jungle first, okay? Big Sister Wei stared at Su Luo intensely, then tilted her head and looked up, as if considering the merit of Su Luo's words. Su Luo smiled, her face calm as she allowed her the time to consider, and Big Sister Wei was unable to tell anything from her expression. Then if you win, 10 suckling pigs. I will roast them myself, Su Luo said with a laugh. Okay. It was much too tempting. Big Sister Wei's drool was nearly about to drip out. Without waiting for Su Luo's command, she had already positioned her feet to run off. Chapter 2165. Fatal Blow 2. Watching the back of Big Sister Wei as she left, the smile on Su Luo's face gradually disappeared. She turned around and glanced at the ancient ruins where Zhao Si was before turning and walking towards the blood mist forest. Su Luo touched the sunny one that Lung Xiao had personally used to draw her. Blood Mist Forest, the location of her and Lung Xiao's duel. Su Luo had sent Big Sister Wei away because she wanted to use her wits to win rather than brute strength. If Big Sister Wei was there, she would be too preoccupied to utilize any schemes and plans, having to focus on protecting the latter. Not long after Su Luo left, Lung Xiao took a group of people to the ancient ruins. At this time, Zhao Si had already woken up. Where are they? Lung Xiao was shocked when he saw not a single trace of fighting present by the still intact door. Thoughts bolted around Zhao Si's brain like lightning. He was thinking about how to present himself in order to make his offense sound lighter. Which one would make him sound more in the wrong? If he admitted that Su Luo had entered, knocked him out, and now knew of the boss plan, or if he said that Su Luo wasn't very curious and had passed the ancient ruins without entering. In fact, did he really even need to consider this at all? And so, Zhao Si made a sour expression, fidgeting as he reported to Lung Xiao. Boss, that stinky girl, Su Luo, she didn't come in at all. She stared at the door, and she then just left. Lung Xiao. He kicked Zhao Si with such force that it sent him flying into the air. Idiot! Idiot! You're all a bunch of idiots. What are you all even useful for? Not one of you is even capable of completing a single task. Boss, calm down. Please calm down. We're tight on time, so you can't afford to be upset. If we allow Su Luo to enter Upstream Mountain, it will be too late to try and take revenge in the future. Ding Yi whispered a reminder in Lung Xiao's ear. I know. Lung Xiao waved his hand in response. Nevertheless, blue veins started to emerge on his forehead. Su Luo, this time, I will personally come after you. Let's see where you can run. Lung Xiao's eyes flashed violently as he sneered at Zhao Si. Are you sure Su Luo didn't enter? Zhao Si shrank back. Lung Xiao grabbed him by the collar and shook him. If she never entered, where did the footprints behind you come from? And you still have the nerve to lie to me. Zhao Si wanted to cry. If he had known they were there before, he wouldn't have lied. Lung Xiao took out the crumpled map from Zhao Si's sleeve. Looking at the red crosses on it, his smile grew increasingly violent. Now do you understand what I meant? Earlier, Lung Xiao had ordered Zhao Si to draw 4 red crosses on the map. He had done so that if Zhao Si was exposed, he would instead lure Su Luo into the 4th trap. Blood Mist Forest. Zhao Si's eyes instantly widened as he stared at Lung Xiao. The boss's plans were so far-reaching, it was ridiculous that he had actually... Humph! Lung Xiao smashed Zhao Si's head violently, splattering the entrails, then kicked his corpse against the wall before sneering out. Other than letting you lure that stinky girl, I also tried to test your loyalty. Looks like you were very unqualified. As soon as Lung Xiao said these words, the group of subordinates behind him all shuddered. In the next instant, all of them collectively realized they had to double their efforts in Su Luo's capture this time. It could be said that Lung Xiao had the entire situation within his grasp. Not only did he lead Su Luo to the Blood Mist Forest, he had also tested Zhao Si and even shocked a group of subordinates into absolute loyalty. Blood Mist Forest. That was Lung Xiao's secret weapon. Being new to this area, Su Luo wouldn't know what was on the inside. In accordance to Leng Zhao's predictions, Su Luo would try to bury poison on one end, maybe even a spirit ball, because she had used that method when she was in the Tower of Trials to eliminate many people. However, Leng Zhao's mouth curled into a strange sneer. So what if you tried to bury poison and spirit balls in the blood mist forest? Su Luo, this time, you would be dead. At this time, Su Luo had already reached the blood mist forest. This was a very peculiar forest, as the entire place appeared withered and yellowed. The jungle appeared to have no traces of life, yet it did not trigger an instinctual danger in people. Su Luo came to a slight halt, as her sixth sense told her that there was an unknown danger following her. Right at the same moment, Leng Xiao was also leading his people into the forest. He ordered his men, "No matter what it takes, I want fresh blood on that wretched girl." The reason why Blood Mist Forest was named the way it was because the trees there were very strange. They were extremely sensitive to the smell of blood. If one's body was covered in blood, things would be interesting. Just the thought of it caused a smile on Leng Zhao's mouth to widen. This was precisely what Su Luo was experiencing at this moment. As she was walking about, the smell of blood sprang toward her. Su Luo quickly moved forward to avoid the spray of blood. However, Leng Xiao had many subordinates, and all of them were scattering and pouring blood onto Su Luo. All of this blood had been collected from demonic beasts, of which they had collected a great amount of before coming here. Leng Xiao had so many men in his command. If he had ordered everyone to rush forward and surround Su Luo, it was possible to kill her right then and there. However, the anger in Leng Zhao's heart couldn't simply be placated by killing Su Luo off, right? He would use these demonic old trees in the Blood Mist Forest to slowly torture Su Luo to death. Although Su Luo was fast and was able to teleport, how could she escape with her being outnumbered by Leng Zhao's men? Before long, Su Luo was splashed with bright red blood. Boss, that wretched girl has been hit." After succeeding, Ding Yi immediately reported to Leng Xiao excitedly to proclaim his achievement. "Good." Bahaha, Leng Xiao was very happy and couldn't help laughing like a madman. "Boss, what's next?" "Continue to soak her in blood, and then gradually drive her towards the deepest part of the Blood Mist Forest," Leng Xiao ordered loudly. He was also rushing towards the deepest part of the forest because he wanted to see Su Luo die with his own eyes, while slowly being tortured to death by those revived old trees. "Ha!" Leng Xiao waved at the two people behind him. "You two, go and help as well. Be sure to make Su Luo into a bloody mess." After laying down his orders, Leng Xiao was alone by himself. He began to slowly walk towards the Blood Mist Forest, moving at a relaxed and casual pace, as if he was taking a leisurely walk through a courtyard. Just the thought of finally being able to kill Su Luo excited him like nothing before. Boss, Su Luo is only 30 miles away from the center of the Blood Mist Forest." "Good. Keep chasing her." "Yes." Only a while later. Boss, Su Luo is only 10 miles away from the center of the Blood Mist Forest." "Good. Keep chasing her." "Yes." Soon enough, the communication amulet rang once again. Boss, Su Luo is only 3 miles away from the center of the Blood Mist Forest. Those 1,000-year-old trees are already beginning to move. Chapter 2166, Fatal Blow 3. Good, the end is in sight. Failure will not be tolerated. Yes, Su Luo's already covered with blood. She's completely drenched in blood now. This time, she will definitely die without a doubt. Good. You guys have done well. You all will be greatly rewarded. Leng Xiao laughed wildly. Very quickly, Leng Xiao arrived at the center of the forest, where he saw Su Luo 100 yards ahead of him. At this moment, he was standing at the highest point in the center of the entire Blood Mist Forest, which granted him the best view of his surroundings, allowing him to clearly see everything that was happening ahead. At this time, Leng Xiao saw Su Luo being cornered into the very center of the forest. Wherever she ran, The ground beneath her was covered in blood, the crimson stains flowing onto the earth. The withered old trees present along the path she ran were desperately absorbing blood from the ground. As they continued to suck the blood, their withered trunk and branches appeared to be reviving themselves as they proceeded to twist about slowly. It wouldn't make any difference if there was only one of this tree. However, there were countless of them present. These trees formed a circle as they all closed in on Su Luo. Good, good. This is great. Lung Zhao's eyes lit up upon seeing it, as his excitement reached a level that could not be described with words. He saw Su Luo resist fiercely, ending in only futility. Those trees were huge, and the revived ones were extremely powerful. Su Luo's small body was as small as a speck of dust compared to them. How could she resist? Lung Zhao saw countless branches weave into a net, wrapping around Su Luo like a silkworm chrysalis. Su Luo swung out her sword, one stroke after another. However, with each chopped branch, 10 more would replace it. The vines were densely packed. They pulled and tightened around Su Luo, landing her in a tragic situation that brought joy to many people. In order to maintain the freshness of the blood, these ancient trees would not strangle Su Luo to death immediately, but they would just hang her like this, draining a bit of blood every day until Su Luo's whole body withered away. Just like that, she would slowly die out. Lung Zhao had seen this before. He had witnessed the trees drain someone to death in front of him before. In that case, it had taken 30 days for that person to die in despair and collapse. This time, it would probably take Su Luo 30 days as well. Ah! Lung Zhao was ecstatic, looking up to the sky and laughing wildly. However, his laughter suddenly came to a halt. His face instantly froze. That was because a dagger had pierced Lung Zhao's chest. While Lung Zhao was in a defenseless state, the assailant stabbed straight in and sank the knife all the way into its hilt. Lung Zhao's eyes were wide as he stared at this person less than a foot away from him in disbelief. Su Luo? How could it be her? Lung Zhao felt his brain crash instantly, as if turning blank and shutting off. Was this an illusion appearing before him? This person could be anyone, even one of his subordinates. However, it was absolutely impossible to have been Su Luo. How could it be her? However, the pain from his heart clearly told him that it was real. He was actually stabbed, and he wasn't hallucinating. Why is it you? Lung Zhao rasped with difficulty. He found that he had difficulty saying even a single word now. The blood in his chest was pitch black as the poison began corroding his body. He was very familiar with this kind of poison, as it was the same poison Su Luo had used to force him to surrender when they were in the Tower of Trials. Struggling, Lung Zhao lowered his head, only to discover a yellowish-brown liquid present on the ground his legs were stepping on. What's more, there were only 2 bones supporting his body from his knees down. My legs! Lung Zhao's eyes were drenched with tears. He wanted to roar, to scream, to yell out loud, but he felt entirely helpless. His back was stiff, and his mind was at a loss. He could feel himself dying, really dying, instead of being teleported out of the Tower of Trials to continue living. Su Luo looked at him with a smile, contempt showing all over her face. How is it? This feeling can't really be experienced in the Tower of Trials, right? UI. Lung Zhao wanted to jump up and kill Su Luo, but found that he didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. Why am I here? Su Luo grinned and jumped over to sit on the big oval stone where Lung Zhao had been sitting before, her smile unwavering. Actually, I've been waiting for you here all this time. Su Luo pointed to the ancient tree that was only 10 yards away from the big rock, replying as though she was stating a fact. I was sitting there before. There's no way you couldn't have noticed me, given your prowess. However, it was a pity that when Lung Zhao saw that Su Luo was being mutilated, his whole body had trembled with excitement. People's IQ would drop wildly when they were excited, so Lung Zhao hadn't noticed his surroundings at all. Is that person the stupid big sister way? Lung Zhao stared at Su Luo with a murderous aura in his eyes. If the expression in his eyes could kill, Su Luo would have long taken her last breath. No, no, no. Su Luo shook his index finger and said with a smile, Big Sister Wei is my combat partner. As if I would use my people as sacrificial bait like that. Then who is that? Lung Xiao roared loudly. If it were not for his thirst for knowledge supporting him, he would have already collapsed. That was because he was going crazy after feeling that his body had been corroded to the thighs. Su Luo spread her hands and shrugged. It was the prize you won for me. Don't tell me that you've forgotten about it. Prize? What prize? Lung Zhao's sluggish mind was still able to quickly pull out those memories. He helped Su Luo draw the intelligent skull, and then what had happened after that? Sunny Doll? Lung Xiao frowned. What was that? Was it not just a piece of garbage? The name Sunny Doll can be really deceiving. In fact, its real name should actually be Mimic Doll. Su Luo's smile was as sly as a little fox. She touched her chin and said triumphantly, Mimic Doll. As the name suggests, it can be used to mimic a person's appearance, so I let it mimic my appearance to trick you. After Su Luo's explanation, Lung Xiao realized that despite having calculated everything, who would have expected that his plans had been countered by Su Luo's? Mimic Doll, Mimic Doll? Ha ha! Lung Xiao looked up to the sky and screamed, laughing until tears were rolling down his face. Those were tears of anguish. This was his last chance, with him having clearly located Su Luo and surrounded her with his men, to end her life right there and nip this problem at its bud. He was certain to get his revenge. He had wanted to make Su Luo feel such incomparable agony to the point of wishing for her own death. So he had used this extreme method. He hadn't expected this, that there would be such a reversal of events. I've lost, I've lost. Lung Zhao's tears kept flowing unceasingly. His laughing was uglier than crying. Chapter 2167. Fatal Blow 4. The intelligent skull that had caused him to hunt down Su Luo had been personally drawn out by himself. The Mimic Doll allowed Su Luo to escape catastrophe and instead put him in this state, had he been the one who helped Su Luo draw it too. At that moment, Lung Xiao really didn't know what to say. He gazed at Su Luo with perplexed eyes. This person, was she really not the reincarnation of the goddess of luck? Her luck? How could it be this good to the point of defying the heavens? Would all those who opposed her end up as miserably as him? I'm not willing. After raising his head to the sky and yelling this phrase, Lung Zhao's body fell backwards, collapsing onto the ground with a loud bang. Looking at Lung Zhao's corpse, Su Luo sighed slowly. At that moment, Lung Zhao's subordinates all looked at Su Luo with dumb faces. However, they did not get closer. Su Luo swept them an indifferent glance. Lung Xiao is the one who had enmity with me. Now that he is dead, do I want to avenge your former boss? Seeing that no one dared to approach her, Su Luo smiled as lightly as the clouds and the wind. If I can kill your boss, then naturally I can kill all of you too. Those who want to send themselves to death can approach me. They continued staring at Su Luo, not one of them moving forwards. Su Luo's smile remained unbothered. Speaking of this, isn't electing a new boss the most important thing for you to do now? Leaving behind these words, Su Luo turned and left. She didn't walk fast or slow, and her steps weren't too big nor too small, but she still emanated an awe-inspiring aura from behind her. Lung Zhao's subordinates looked at each other. If Lung Xiao hadn't died, perhaps they would have besieged Su Luo. Now that Lung Xiao had died, they each reconsidered their chances and could only watch as Su Luo walked away. Actually, if they had surrounded her, Su Luo wouldn't have been able to defeat them, but Su Luo had long ago grasped their thinking, so she took advantage of their selfishness to blatantly retreat. Her retreat was clean and classy, confident and assertive. After Su Luo exited the blood mist forest, she quickly ran to rendezvous with Big Sister Wei. Earlier, Big Sister Wei had left with the flying pig, rushing to the exit of the sunset forest. However, after waiting for so long, she was bored and could only sit on a rock with a blank expression. She waited and waited until she began to feel sleepy. Soon enough, she was snoring like a pig. When Su Luo returned, She smiled with bitterness at Big Sister Wei, who was sleeping soundly on the ground. Big Sister Wei was really easygoing and carefree, never worrying about a thing. In these circumstances, she was still able to sleep even better than a pig. This truly left one speechless. Su Luo patted Big Sister Wei, waking her up. Big Sister Wei rubbed her sleepy eyes, and when she saw Su Luo, her eyebrows rose in surprise, and she pulled Su Luo excitedly. "I was faster than you. I want roasted suckling pig." "Okay." Su Luo had been exhausted for so long, and also needed some rest after the danger had passed, so she was in a good mood. She helped Big Sister Wei to roast the suckling pig, then allowed her to store it in the little storage space so that whenever she wanted to eat, she could take some out. Then, the two continued on their journey. Su Luo could only smile bitterly, because after passing through the forest and the fight with Lung Xiao, over half of the time limit had already passed. If the golden airship hadn't been broken, they could have still made it. However, with more than half the distance still to cover, going on foot, they would not make it on time. Sure enough, when Su Luo and Big Sister Wei arrived, the assessment had already begun for 2 hours. At that time, they had already stopped letting people in, so Su Luo and Big Sister Wei were blocked outside the entrance. Go back, go back. There is no place for you to stay here." The guard at the gate of the upstream mountain stopped Su Luo and Big Sister Wei outside the entrance. "Go back? That wouldn't do." Su Luo had the intelligent skull in her possession. However, Lung Zhao's subordinates had been so stupefied by his death that they had forgotten about this matter. Even if she were to go back to Midstream Mountain with Big Sister Wei, they would not be safe either. The guard was a big, sturdy man in his 30s, with a scar on his face that reached diagonally from the corner of his right eye to his left chin. He looked fierce and vicious, not someone to anger. Furthermore, although he was a gatekeeper, he was not weak at all. He seemed to be at least a 3-star saint rank, and even Big Sister Wei might not be able to defeat him. Seeing that Su Luo and Big Sister Wei remained motionless, the scarred man yelled out, "Don't block the entrance. Hurry and go away." At that very moment, a small group not far off was rushing back. The head of the group was a girl. Seeing this girl, Su Luo felt as if there was a light in front of her. This girl had a very nice appearance and was much more beautiful than Li Yaoyao from back then. She had eyebrows that looked as if they were drawn on, an icy body and bones of jade, and an imposing manner, like a fairy untouchable by dust. Following her were 5 or 6 men, all of whom were good-looking, handsome, or mighty. However, the most notable thing they had in common was that they all circled her, courteous and pleasing, for fear that they would somehow provoke the fairy. They had also just rushed out of the forest, but Su Luo appeared dusty and windblown, whereas this fairy's clothing looked pure and unstained. In contrast, Su Luo looked like a wild girl from the countryside, very ordinary to the eye. Su Luo saw one of the men in the group, then lowered her head slightly and stood in silence beside Big Sister Wei, relying on Big Sister Wei's huge body to block her from the other's line of sight. At that time, the other party's eyes were all focused on the figure of the fairy, so nobody noticed Su Luo's presence. At the same time, Su Luo was able to identify who most likely this fairy was, because she remembered that Lin Banli was crazy about Fairy Wu Yu. He was only one out of many of Fairy Wu Yu's suitors. Looking at these circumstances, Lin Banli and this group of outstanding men could only be surrounding Fairy Wu Yu. Fairy Wu Yu was the proudest disciple of the Third Elder. After Su Luo had a confrontation with the Third Elder, she and Fairy Wu Yu naturally became enemies, with no room for reconciliation. Su Luo hadn't intended to encounter Fairy Wu Yu so soon, so she asked Big Sister Wei to block her figure on purpose. At that time, the group of men was surrounding Fairy Wu Yu, wholeheartedly pampering her as they moved towards the gate. Fairy Wu Yu inevitably noticed Big Sister Wei. She frowned slightly and glanced at the scarred man. "What's the matter? When has the upstream mountain become a place that a mere cat or dog can enter?" Big Sister Wei looked around with bright eyes. Where is it? Where is it? Where is the dog?" The roast suckling pig was too greasy to eat so often, so she had just been thinking about changing up her tastes. Ha 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 ha, the group of men behind Fairy Wu Yu laughed out loud when they heard Big Sister Wei's silly remarks, each one of them holding their stomachs as they laughed in an exaggerated manner. Chapter 2168. Fatal Blow 5. Lifting her pretty eyebrows, Fairy Wu Yu glanced sideways at the scarred man. In an instant, the arrogant Brother Scar instantly turned into an obedient dog. These two people came here for the Midstream Mountain assessment, but they were too late. A person guarding next to Fairy Wu Yu sneered, "I haven't been here for many years. Has the Midstream Mountain really become worthless to this degree now? Even this kind of fool can place in the top 3? So shameful." In order to please their goddess, the others followed, scolding. "How far can the Midstream Mountain be from here? One can get here in half a day. They can actually walk for 2 days and still be late. Are they even capable of participating in the assessment? Hurry up and get lost to your Midstream Mountain. Don't bring embarrassment to yourselves here." Su Luo's fist clenched in a tight ball. She had fantasized several times about how Fairy Wu Yu would set herself apart and be the object of everyone's love and support. But if the person in front of her was really Fairy Wu Yu, Su Luo could not help but be disappointed. At that moment, someone within the group of people let out a soft "ha." It was Lin Banley. Su Luo sighed helplessly. What was meant to come would eventually come. Sure enough, Lin Banley saw Su Luo and recognized her, so he greeted her in a subtle way. In fact, he was not to blame. It was true that Su Luo's speed through the mountains was too astonishing. Lin Banley had witnessed Su Luo's assessment at the Genius Training Camp only a month ago, and it had only been in the span of a month. Only 1 month! Su Luo had already passed through the distal end mountain, the downstream mountain, and the midstream mountain, and now she had arrived for the assessment at the upper mountain. What kind of speed and advancement was this? Moreover, back then it was only after the assessment that Su Luo broke through to the commander rank. But what about now? She turned out to be a 7-star commander rank. Wasn't Saint rank now, just around the corner? Lin Banley was shocked, his eyes widened, and he continued staring at Su Luo. When Fairy Wu Yu saw one of her admirers staring at someone else like this, anger began to grow in her heart, and full of anger, she swept her eyes over Su Luo. The instant she saw Su Luo, the Fairy Wu Yu who claimed to be an overwhelming being for all sentient beings, felt as if a thunderbolt had struck the clear sky, making her dumbfounded. What kind of beautiful woman was this? Her eyes were as clear as the autumn waters, bright eyes and white teeth, fairy-like jade bones, and no cosmetics on her face, as cosmetics would only stain her natural beauty. She wore a goose-yellow tunic that had been scraped by branches, the corners of her skirt were stained with mud, and the fabric was empty of embroidered patterns, embellishments, and accessories, with only 2 sashes fluttering in the wind. She stood so quiet that the countless sceneries behind her were like the backdrop, embellishing her. At that moment, Fairy Wu Yu finally understood what it meant to truly wash away the vulgarities in life. With a slight smile, Su Luo looked towards Fairy Wu Yu. At that moment, Fairy Wu Yu subconsciously took a step back. With just a glance, the beautiful woman in front of her had managed to put her on edge. "Su Luo, is that really you?" Lin Banley at last recovered from his shock and looked at her in surprise. Su Luo rolled her eyes in displeasure. Could he be doing this on purpose? "You arrived here from the distal end mountain this quickly, and you seem to be much stronger than last time. What kind of miracle medicine did you take?" Lin Banley said happily as he ran towards Su Luo. Before Su Luo could reply, Fairy Wu Yu's cold eyes swept towards Lin Banley. "You know her?" Fairy Wu Yu raised her chin and glanced at Su Luo with arrogance. At that moment, she had already recovered her lofty air of a domineering queen, who was above everyone else. "Yes, I met her a month ago when she was undergoing the assessment of the Genius Training Camp," Lin Banley said, with a slight change on his face, because he had just recalled that Su Luo and the Third Elder were enemies. "A month ago? The Genius Training Camp assessment?" This sentence shocked many people, including Fairy Wu Yu. It was not terrible to be more beautiful than her. But if she was more talented than her, then this was too much to bear. She would never allow such a woman to continue maturing. Fairy Wu Yu glanced at Su Luo with cold eyes and asked Lin Banley with a casual tone, Su Luo? Why does this name sound so familiar? Lin Banley. Lin Banley was embarrassed because he knew that Luo Yichen was protecting Su Luo. Fairy Wu Yu hummed with a faint sound, but her manner wasn't angry, making Lin Banley uncertain on how to answer. Seeing that Lin Banley didn't reply, Fairy Wu Yu's thin eyebrows lifted a millimeter. Seeing the upset gaze of Fairy Wu Yu, the rest of her admirers became unhappy, and one by one began to run towards Lin Banley. Lin Banley, do you still want to hang out with us? Get lost if you don't want to. If you make Fairy Wu Yu unhappy for a moment, we will make you unhappy for a lifetime. You have the opportunity to share the worries for Wu Yu, and yet you're finding all kinds of excuses? What is wrong with you? Su Luo, Big Sister Wei. Seeing Su Luo's expression of disbelief, Lin Banley's expression twisted, and he walked in silence, step by step, back to the side of Fairy Wu Yu, and then whispered something into her ear. After he finished saying these words, Fairy Wu Yu's indifferent expression turned into a thick layer of frost, and her gaze towards Su Luo became as sharp as the tip of an iceberg, as if she was digging her eyes into her like a dagger. So, the vile wench who opposed my master turns out to be you? The frost on Fairy Wu Yu's face faded, replaced by a sneer. Su Luo stood up straight, and she met Fairy Wu Yu's gaze with a neither humble nor arrogant expression, just a calm smile at the corner of her mouth. I don't understand what you mean. My master is the third elder of Mingyue Hall. Fairy Wu Yu looked at Su Luo with mocking eyes, as if she were looking at a dead person. Indeed, a woman who Fairy Wu Yu was unhappy with was the equivalent of a dead person. Everyone knew that in this genius training camp, you could offend anyone but Fairy Wu Yu. Otherwise, you would meet a miserable end. Fairy Wu Yu decided that she didn't have to wait for Su Luo to comprehend this rule, and that she was already a dead person. Third elder of Mingyue Palace? Yes, I've heard of her. Su Luo said with indifference. That's all. Fairy Wu Yu frowned and stared at Su Luo. Su Luo smiled and looked at her. For a while, the two stood face to face, and something seemed to collide and burn with violence between them. Suddenly, Fairy Wu Yu laughed out loud. Very well, you dare to fight against my master. Now that is really courageous, but this senior sister will tell you. Fairy Wu Yu leaned over and whispered in Su Luo's ear. Dare to offend me? Your death is certain. Chapter 2169. Wu Yu won. When she finished speaking, Fairy Wu Yu smiled again. However, Su Luo gave her an unexpected reply. Annie, it is not yet certain who will die. Annie, in an instant, Fairy Wu Yu had a mouthful of blood stuck in her throat, unable to force it out. This vile wench had actually called me Annie. And Annie, you're looking for death. Fairy Wu Yu was about to explode with anger. Her admirers protecting her from behind were all dumbfounded. At that moment, they charged forwards one by one, surrounding Su Luo and directing glares at her. You vile wench, hurry up and apologize, or else you wouldn't want to know how this will end. He had dealt Su Luo a light punishment on account of her unparalleled beauty. If it had been switched to an ugly monster, Su Luo would have long ago been kicked away by Fairy Wu Yu's group of admirers. With a smile, Su Luo swept her gaze over their faces, touching her jaw in deep thought. In fact, she really couldn't understand. Was Fairy Wu Yu really that charming? These men weren't bad-looking, so why were they always around her? For this reason, Su Luo's gaze remained on Fairy Wu Yu, pondering for a while. Seeing Su Luo's fearless appearance, Fairy Wu Yu was overcome with anger. She waved her hand. Kill her for me? As soon as these words came out, her admirers felt a little uneasy. This girl was truly beautiful and dazzling to the eyes. Wouldn't it be such a pity to just kill her like this? Even if she was a vase, she was also pleasing to the eye. As a result, none of Fairy Wu Yu's admirers wanted to act first. Now Fairy Wu Yu was choking with so much anger. She had been threatened by Su Luo's beauty from the very beginning, and now, seeing that even the hearts of her own admirers have been shaken, how was this bearable? She definitely couldn't bear this. This vile, which had to be dealt with early on. As a result, Fairy Wu Yu raised her eyebrows, and her bewitching eyes swept them a glance as she played with a small strand of her hair. Then, she said, "Whoever helps me to kill this vile wench can stay in Wuyo Pavilion tonight." Wow! All her admirers gasped. To them, being allowed to stay in Wuyo Pavilion was far too big of a temptation. This not only meant having a fragrant beauty in their arms, but at the same time, swish, one after another, fierce eyes all focused on Su Luo, and their gazes were like that of a wolf, as if they couldn't wait to tear her apart. A trace of alarm arose in Su Luo's heart. It wasn't suitable to make any moves now. At least, before Luo Yichen arrived, she absolutely couldn't act out, because the strength of her and Big Sister Wei combined was still not enough to fight against this many. The circle surrounding Su Luo and Big Sister Wei shrank little by little. Su Luo frowned. She had no choice but to move out her backer. "You can't attack us. Ha, vile wench, you're afraid now?" Fairy Wu Yu, trying to save face, wore a smug and triumphant smile on her face. Su Luo furrowed her brows and glanced at Lin Banli. Among the group of people, he was the only one who kept standing without making a move. Fairy Wu Yu had noticed this as well, and her brows made a deep frown. Then, with her hands raised, she cried out, "Stop for now!" After everyone stopped, Fairy Wu Yu fixed her icy gaze on Lin Banli. Why didn't you make a move?" Lin Banli moved his lips, but remained silent. Fairy Wu Yu had no intention to let this indecisive traitor off. She smiled and leaned close to his ear in an ambiguous silence, her white jade fingers stroking Lin Banli's chest, and she said with a soft voice, "Could it be that tonight you don't want to come?" Lin Banli closed his eyes and took a deep breath, because as soon as Fairy Wu Yu got close, the familiar fragrance assailing him had filled his mind with inviting, lingering pictures. "Right now, go and kill her for me, okay?" Wu Yu Fairy stroked Lin Banli's handsome face with jade-like fingers, her eyes looking straight at him. Her eyes were as beautiful as silk, causing one's heart to throb. Lin Banli clenched his fists. "Be good, go now, ah?" Fairy Wu Yu handed Lin Banli a sharp dagger, then gently patted his shoulder, pushing him in front of Su Luo. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. She shifted her eyes, looking at the envious, jealous, and hateful gazes of Fairy Wu Yu's admirers. Then, looking back at Lin Banli's dagger, Su Luo suddenly had a very absurd idea. Did these people really love Fairy Wu Yu? She always had a feeling that something was not right, but she couldn't quite seize what it was. "Are your minds all clear?" Su Luo asked Lin Banli. "I have never been confused." Lin Banli's expression was cold and serious, cold as ice to Su Luo, but with fiery passion to Fairy Wu Yu. Two completely different expressions. "What exactly do you love about her?" Su Luo felt curious. Lin Banli hadn't answered yet, when Fairy Wu Yu patted Su Luo on the shoulder and said to her with a smile, "Junior sister, what's the use of being good-looking? How would you, a green one, be able to understand these things?" How would Su Luo not understand? However, what she didn't understand was, is the inner place really that lacking in women? That you guys are so hungry and blind? Even two are considered an option? Big Sister Wei remained silent, her face expressing that she didn't understand a thing. Fairy Wu Yu's admirers felt insulted. You, how dare you call Fairy Wu Yu a sow?" In their hearts, Fairy Wu Yu was like the 9 heavens profound 3 descending to the mortal world, with skin of ice and bones of jade, as a refined immortal. How could she be a sow? Fairy Wu Yu became furious. "Kill her! Kill her! Kill her quickly! No, cut her tongue first, then cut her nose, then gouge out her eyes, then cut her limbs, then throw her into a pigsty." Fairy Wu Yu yelled, appalled. She had never received such an insult in her life. Her name was Wu Yu, not only because of the 3 elders' expectations of her, but also because of her unique qualifications. Beautiful as a flower, talented and intelligent, surrounded by beautiful men. Things that others couldn't even obtain in a lifetime, she could get with a flick of her finger, so her life had always been carefree. However, after encountering Su Luo today, she had suffered countless times. Lin Bamley looked at Su Luo in disbelief. The dagger in his hand paused. "You can't kill me." Su Luo sneered again. "Others don't know? But how could you not know? Brother Luo won't let you off." "Luo Yichen?" Fairy Wu Yu asked sharply. "Luo Yichen? Did this vile wench have connections with Luo Yichen?" "Yes, Luo Yichen." Su Luo glanced at her. As far as she knew, Luo Yichen was not close to Fairy Wu Yu. Furthermore, he was powerful, and right now only he could solve this game of chess. Who knew that upon hearing Luo Yichen's name, Fairy Wu Yu's expression would change in an instant, and she would stare at Su Luo fiercely. "What is your relationship with Luo Yichen? How could he protect you?" "How dare you pretend to be taking orders from the city lord? You deserve to die. Chop her head off and feed it to the dogs. Whoever can kill her can stay in Wuyo Pavilion tonight." Fairy Wu Yu again announced the hefty reward. There was a burst of surprise in Su Luo's heart. There had been an appearance of many people with diamond tablets? Or was Fairy Wu Yu speaking nonsense? As Fairy Wu Yu's voice fell, her minions swooped towards Su Luo, motivated by the reward. "We are here to participate in the assessment of the upstream mountain. You kill just because you want to kill? Aren't there any rules?" Su Luo was expecting Luo Yichen to arrive soon and was deliberately stalling for time in order to wait for him to come. "Rules? Fairy Wu Yu, and the rules here. What's wrong with killing you? It's an honor for you to die under my hand." Fairy Wu Yu triumphed. "How can you kill anyone so casually in upstream mountain?" Su Luo said in anger. "This is outside the entrance of the upstream mountain. It belongs to the magical beast zone girl. It's not against the rules to kill in the magical beast zone." Fairy Wu Yu saw through Su Luo's bluffing, and she rushed forward, the light of her sword directed at Su Luo's face. The sword flashed. By pure instincts, Su Luo tried to avoid it. However, Fairy Wu Yu was so much stronger than her, so she couldn't dodge it at all. If this sword stabbed her, Su Luo's flowery jade face would be completely ruined. At that very moment, Big Sister Wei rushed forward and stood in front of Su Luo. Because Big Sister Wei had a big figure, the sword pierced her in the chest fiercely. At the same time, 5 or 6 of Fairy Wu Yu's admirers began to attack. Bang, bang, bang. Fists, palm strikes, weapons. These attacks all greeted the Big Sister Wei. For a moment, Big Sister Wei coughed up blood from being beaten, and her figure shook. They had come from the midstream mountain. These people were all elites from the upstream mountain. Usually, just one of them was already enough for them to deal with. But now they were being besieged. Su Luo's eyes burst into a fierce rage. "Fairy Wu Yu and all her admirers. I would remember all of you." Big Sister Wei was seriously injured, but the protected Su Luo showed no signs of injury. This made Fairy Wu Yu extremely dissatisfied. She tossed Big Sister Wei aside into the air, and the cold sword in her hand abruptly stabbed towards Su Luo's throat. She wanted Su Luo to die. Wu Yu Fairy's sword was as fast as a ray of light. Su Luo couldn't dodge it at all. The sword was both ruthless and tricky, and Su Luo's head could be cut off with a single blow. If her body was severed, even for the gods would be difficult to save her. Even Fairy Wu Yu's admirers couldn't bear it. The smile on Fairy Wu Yu's face was as brilliant as cherry blossoms and shone as bright as the stars. Su Luo could feel the icy coldness of the sword. But at that instant, Su Luo found that time seemed to stand still. Su Luo looked down. The sword was only an inch away from her throat, but it seemed to have been stopped, unable to stab further by even a small distance. She raised her eyes and looked at Fairy Wu Yu. At this time, her triumphant smile was frozen and stiff. Her eyes looked in the direction of the sword in midair, with deep fear and horror. Su Luo followed her gaze. There was a man there, a man who was as elegant as a jade, like a god descending earth. She saw him in midair, wearing a luxurious blue brocade robe swaying in the wind, and his handsome face was lit with a faint brilliance by the afterglow behind him. His appearance was unparalleled, and his eyes were as deep as mist, revealing an unpredictable color. His face was stern, his eyes were as sharp as a sword, and he looked fiercely at Fairy Wu Yu. Fairy Wu Yu trembled, and her eyes flashed with horror. Then she squeezed out a charming smile. "Brother Luo, did you come to see Wu Yu?" Luo Yichen landed slowly, his beautiful eyes flashing with a dull tone, and his voice was different from his previously clear and gentler voice. "You truly have the nerve." Fairy Wu Yu felt as if she was falling into an abyss. It was actually true. What that vile wench said was actually true. She really had the protection of Brother Luo. How hateful. Fairy Wu Yu smiled reluctantly. Wu Yu is unaware of what Brother Luo knows, and I hope Brother Luo would educate me. Luo Yichen never looked at me with a kind expression. How hateful. One day, I would make you kneel before me, kneel and lick my toes. Fairy Wu Yu secretly swore this in her heart. Chapter 2171. Wu Yu 3. Luo Yichen flicked his finger, and Fairy Wu Yu's cold sword instantly split into countless segments, dropping to the ground with a clatter. For a second, an uptight expression passed over Fairy Wu Yu's face, but it quickly disappeared. She raised her head again with a seductive smile in her eyes. "Brother Luo, this sword was given to me by the third elder herself." Luo Yichen was unmoved. He didn't even bother to give her a glance, completely ignoring her. Fairy Wu Yu angrily clenched her fist. Hateful, hateful, hateful. The man she most wanted to seduce from the dragon list actually ignored her. Luo Yichen's actions at first added fuel to Fairy Wu Yu's frustration. However, watching him dote on Su Luo threw her in a rage, albeit calm on the outside. At this time, Su Luo had long ago run over to help Big Sister Wei up, feeding her a pill. Although Big Sister Wei's body was practically invincible, she had received very severe attacks and fell unconscious for a while. Provoked by the bright red bloodstains on her body, Su Luo's eyes turned red and she glared at Fairy Wu Yu hatefully. This woman, she would remember. Fairy Wu Yu gazed at Su Luo contemptuously. "If you have the capability to do so, then seek revenge on me. If you don't, then what are you staring at me for?" Su Luo clenched her fist. However, she immediately smiled and said, 1 year. After 1 year, I will kill you." Hearing this, it was as if Fairy Wu Yu had heard the funniest joke in the world. She sneered coldly. 1 year? You think you will be able to surpass me in 1 year? Ha! Su Luo put Big Sister Wei down. She stood up slowly, walking step by step up to face Fairy Wu Yu with a deadly serious look, and said, "I am challenging you. Do you dare accept?" Looking into Su Luo's gaze, which seemed as deep as the oceans, Fairy Wu Yu had faltered for a moment. Although the depths of Su Luo's gaze appeared calm on the surface, beyond the calm surface was like a storm of waves thousands of feet high. Under the gazes of so many people, how could Fairy Wu Yu withdraw? She smiled coldly and raised her chin, stalling for time. "You want this fairy not to hunt you down during this year's time, right?" Having this point been seen through by Fairy Wu Yu, Su Luo didn't get mad. Instead, the ridicule at the corners of her mouth became increasingly apparent. "It's no wonder you dare not accept. I heard you entered the upstream mountain at 25 years old. I'm only a teenager this year. Aren't you just afraid that once I grow up, I'll surpass you?" This method of provocation was effective, regardless of time and place. Talked down upon by Su Luo, Fairy Wu Yu immediately sprung up. "You stinky girl, is being a teenager that amazing? What is there to be proud of?" "Annie, I just am this proud of myself. You are flying into a rage again." No matter how advanced your cultivation is, this 30-year-old, you can't return to your teens. Su Luo folded her arms. her gaze full of mockery and disdain. In fact, Fairy Wu Yu at 30 years old was already considered the youngest in the genius training camp. Because in the genius training camp, if you put some of your spiritual energy into your appearance would hardly change. Therefore, it was difficult to tell one's age in the genius training camp. Some people on the dragon list were over 100 years old. However, because their appearances remained youthful, they all looked to be young people at first glance. Age originally was Fairy Wu Yu's absolute pride. However, with this evildoer Su Luo, her ego had been spit upon by a girl that was indeed only 18 years old. It was truly absurd to compare individuals with 12 years between them. Entering the upstream mountain at the age of 18, this was record-breaking among upstream mountain candidates, right? However, she had not yet entered. Fairy Wu Yu would never let her enter easily. Fairy Wu Yu took a deep breath and then took another. She could barely suppress the anger in her chest. Staring coldly at Su Luo, she said, "A year? Letting you live another year. It's not impossible." But Fairy Wu Yu's eyes were locked on Luo Yichen with an alluring gaze, like soft waves washing ashore a mountain. "If you lose, you must die without question. At the same time, Brother Luo must also drink mime Lady in One." "Lady in Pink? What is that?" Su Luo frowned. This name wasn't quite reassuring. Fairy Wu Yu swept a disdainful glance towards the young green to Su Luo. She looked straight at Luo Yichen. Luo Yichen frowned deeply. Su Lu might not have understood what Lady in Pink. However, this did not mean that she didn't know precisely what this matter was. To drink a Lady in Pink, it naturally meant to become one of Fairy Wu Yu's people. Seeing that Luo Yichen's expression seemed off, Su Luo guessed that something was not right. Moreover, she didn't want to owe him any big favors, so she waved her hand. "You're demanding too much. Change it." "Won't change." Fairy Wu Yu smiled, directly gazing affectionately at Luo Yichen. That handsome face, cold expression, unsmiling style. She really loved this so much. She really liked him, really liked him. Su Luo. At this moment, Luo Yichen stared at Su. "Are you sure you can advance another 5 stars in a year?" Su Luo was currently 7-star commander rank. She would be a 3-star saint rank if she advanced another 5 stars. Su Luo, seeing Luo Yichen full of expectation, bit her tongue and nodded in response to Luo Yichen. "I can." Even if she couldn't, she had to make it possible. She didn't want Luo Yichen to submit himself to Fairy Wu Yu, or to allow her to trample on them in revenge. Luo Yichen rubbed Su Luo's head, and his eyes seemed to flash with doting. And then he nodded to Fairy Wu Yu and lightly said 2 words. "I agree." Fairy Wu Yu had long ago been stunned from the moment Su Luo nodded and claimed she could be promoted by 5 stars in a year. 5 stars? It was impossible to achieve for her, Fairy Wu Yu, even if she had 5 or 10 years. Yet this stinky girl said she would get 5 stars in a year? What a joke. But the bigger joke was that Luo Yichen actually agreed to this joke. He actually agreed to it. Fairy Wu Yu looked at Luo Yichen dumbfoundedly, then clapped. "Okay, within a year, I, Wu Yu, will not kill Su Luo. After a year, we will have a battle to the death on stage to decide the winner. And then, you will be mine." Fairy Wu Yu was afraid that if she was any slower, Luo Yichen would regret and change his mind. So, she hurriedly agreed. A corner of Luo Yichen's mouth raised up in disdain. At this time, all of Fairy Wu Yu's admirers glared at Luo Yichen with a hostile look, because if she had Luo Yichen, Fairy Wu Yu would not want them anymore. At this moment, Luo Yichen glared at Su Luo, then sighed slowly. It really wasn't easy to motivate this girl. Su Luo gave him a big smile. "I've really brought trouble to you, Brother Luo Yichen." At the thought of Fairy Wu Yu forcing Brother Luo to bow, Su Luo found this image very amusing. "You are not allowed to lose." Luo Yichen poked Su Luo's forehead with his slender finger. Su Luo pouted her lips. She covered her poked forehead. "I know. If you poke me again, I'll lose for you." Luo Yichen brought Su Luo and was about to leave, but Fairy Wu Yu pulled his sleeve. "Wait. She can't go in?" Chapter 2172. Wuyu 4. Although there was still a year remaining, Fairy Wuyu had already determined that Luo Yichen was hers. Therefore, at this moment, she was already exercising her sovereignty. However, with a flick of his sleeve, Luo Yichen sent Fairy Wuyu back 3 meters. Fairy Wuyu stomped her feet, but was still able to catch up and stopped in front of Luo Yichen. Pointing at Su Luo, she said with a cold voice, "She is not someone from upstream mountain, so she can't enter this door." Although the 2 of them were selected from the midstream mountain because they were late for the assessment, they can only return this time. Therefore, they must wait to be selected in next month's assessment at midstream mountain. Fairy Wuyu sneered as she glared at Su Luo. She just wouldn't let Su Luo, this vile wench, enter. Su Luo looked up at Luo Yichen. Could Fairy Wuyu be saying the truth? Who would have thought for Luo Yichen's indifferent voice to ring out? The rules are indeed like this. But Luo Yichen's voice paused. He looked at Fairy Wuyu with indifference. 2 people died on the battlefield, so 2 slots have now been freed up, and these 2 slots would naturally be filled in by people from the midstream mountain. Fairy Wuyu rolled her eyes. How could there be such a coincidence? It just so happened that 2 places have been freed up. Did that mean that Su Luo, this wench, could enter? But there is no place for her to stay. Fairy Wuyu replied with uncertainty. Stay with me? Luo Yichen pulled Su Luo and glanced at Fairy Wuyu with a smile. Do you have any opinions about that? Fairy Wuyu certainly had an opinion. A great deal of opinions. Nevertheless, senior brother Luo completely ignored her, not even shooting a glance at her as he turned around and left. Su Luo proceeded to carry big sister Wei on her back and followed Luo Yichen. Living in the same yard with Luo Yichen, Su Luo thought about what Nangong Luyun had warned her about. Although she had planned on not agreeing, big sister Wei was now seriously injured. Besides, Fairy Wuyu was glaring at her with covetous eyes. This was not the time to be willful. In any case, Luo Yichen was on her side, though she didn't know who his master was. On the way, Su Luo tried to talk to Luo Yichen, trying to figure out who had entrusted him to take care of her. Nonetheless, Luo Yichen was tight-lipped about it. Moreover, he even kept a straight face and seemed to even be angry all along the way. Thinking about what just happened, Su Luo agreed with Luo Yichen. If in 1 year she lost, then such a handsome person would be sent to the hands of Fairy Wuyu just like that. While Su Luo was thinking about this, Luo Yichen turned his face and shot her a fierce glare, emphasizing every word. You are not allowed to lose. Su Luo's lips tightened into a white line, and she nodded. Senior brother Luo, I will definitely win for you. A smile had in fact appeared within Su Luo's heart. She hadn't expected that senior brother Luo had kept a straight face all the way because he was paying attention to such a matter. So that was why he had been so angry just now. It was really quite cute. Luo Yichen glared at Su Luo and didn't say another word throughout the rest of the journey. Nevertheless, he never stopped caring for her. He took Su Luo to his exclusive Wuchen mountain and left her there before disappearing off to somewhere else. As she looked at this Wuchen mountain, waves of admiration overwhelmed Su Luo's heart. What a world of difference in treatment. Brother Luo lived all by himself in such a big place. It was bigger than Distal End Mountain, where thousands of people lived. The villa on the Distal End Mountain where she stayed was like a beggar's den compared to this place. This was an ancient castle with an incomparably large surrounding garden. It had a low-key profile, yet it was exceedingly luxurious. A whole line of guards stood by the entrance, all of whom possessed extraordinary cultivation. Mountains could be seen far into the distance, with vast, endless plains of greenery in between. An old man who seemed to be a housekeeper, followed by 2 rows of maids, was standing in wait respectfully for Su Luo's instructions. This was because Luo Yichen had left a message for his housekeeper when he had brought Su Luo back to his residence. I have given her the authority as the second master of this place. The housekeeper naturally had to give Su Luo his highest regard. There was still time to tour this whole manor. However, As Su Luo was still carrying the unconscious big sister Wei on her back, she asked the housekeeper for a room. After entering the room, Su Luo placed big sister Wei on the bed and proceeded to check her body. Su Luo was very lucky this time. It was fortunate that big sister Wei's body was indestructible. If not, she would have lost her life under the repeated attacks from those people. However, due to the seriousness of her injuries, it would be impossible for her to recover completely within 1.5 years if left untreated. Touching her chin, Su Luo started looking for medicine in her space. Aside from the other attacks, there was also the poison on Fairy Wu Yu's cold sword. Su Luo had no suitable detoxification pill to treat this at the moment, so she would have to refine it herself. Su Luo proceeded to look through the medical herbs stored in the space. After sorting through them one by one, she found that she only had 8 of the 9 herbs she needed for the detoxification pill. The missing one was a poisonous serpent-scorpion grass. This was Su Luo's first time here, so she was very unfamiliar with Upstream Mountain. She had intended to go ask senior brother Luo, but found that he had closed the door to his cultivation room tightly. Furthermore, there was a group of bodyguards guarding him, making it utterly impossible for her to gain entry. Therefore, Su Luo could only use her brain to solve her problems. After some inquiries, Su Luo found that she could not obtain the poisonous serpent-scorpion grass by exchanging points, leaving her with the only choice of collecting it herself. Su Luo went to search again. At last, she found some information that someone from the eastern region of the magical beast zone might have encountered the poisonous serpent-scorpion grass. Although it was doubtful, it was also a clue. With Big Sister Wei lying on the bed in a coma because of her, how could Su Luo do nothing to help her? Even if the odds were slim, she was determined to give it a shot. The housekeeper looked at Su Luo. He tried to say something but hesitated before saying, "Miss Su, the inner magical beast zone cannot be compared to the outer magical beast zone. The inner magical beast zone here is very difficult to deal with." Su Luo smiled. "I know." The housekeeper evaluated Su Luo's strength before sighing in silence. 7-star commander rank. How did she manage to enter the upstream mountain with that level of cultivation? Was there really no tricks involved in that? One should know, those masters on the dragon list were at the very least saint ranks. Nevertheless, the housekeeper also knew that it was out of his scope of duties. Therefore, he didn't say much and just went to see Luo Yichen. When he came out of the cultivation room, the doubt in his eyes was even more apparent. Nonetheless, he still continued to follow his master's instructions. Soon, Su Luo met a group of strangers. There were 5 strangers in this group. All of them were dragons and phoenixes among one, possessing cultivations of saint rank and above. The housekeeper explained to Su Luo. The master said that if Miss Su insists on entering the inner magical beast zone, you must be protected by Xiao Luo's team before you can enter there. Seeing Su Luo's doubts, the housekeeper explained to her with patience and detail. Many people on the dragon list will form teams to enter the inner magical beast zone. Each team will have a captain, and our master is the leader of this team, though he is only the leader in name. Su Luo understood what he was saying. Every team needed a backer, and Luo Yichen was serving as the backer of this team. Chapter 2173. Junior Sister 1. Her gaze swept over the faces of those 4 people. With a single glance, Su Luo could see in their eyes that these people didn't share the same way of thinking. However, even if they had different mindsets, so what? After all, they just needed to work together once. Su Luo let them introduce themselves. Luo Qing, 3-star saint rank. Male. One of his eyes was bigger than the other. At a glance, there was an interesting look to him. When Luo Yichen wasn't around, he would serve as the deputy leader. In fact, it was already good enough if Luo Yichen showed up once out of 100 times. Tian Meng, 2-star saint rank. Male. Just like his name, he had a burly and tall physique, was muscular coupled with a reckless personality. Su Yin, 2-star saint rank. Male. At a glance, he looked normal, with nothing that seemed out of the ordinary in his appearance. However, Su Luo took a little longer look at him than at the others, as she had noticed a hidden breath of darkness coming from him. Therefore, she came to the conclusion that this person was extremely suited to be a spy or an assassin. Li Man Man, 1-star Saint rank. Female. If she wasn't compared to Fairy Wu Yu or Su Luo, she would be considered to be a real beauty. However, her personality seemed somewhat haughty and arrogant. These four people finished their brief self-introductions with calm and indifferent looks in their eyes, especially from the beautiful lady. As arrogant as a peacock, she took advantage of the others' obliviousness to glare at Su Luo fiercely. Su Luo was speechless. It looked like if she wanted to pick some poisonous serpent scorpion grass on her trip to the inner magical beast zone, it would be no laughing matter. At the very least, she wouldn't receive very good treatment. Nevertheless, the only thing Su Luo wanted to do right now was to pick all the poisonous serpent scorpion grass to treat Big Sister way. She held no interest towards any other matters right now. Since going on with it was better than falling into conflict, Su Luo decided to start the journey. Luo Yichen's residence wasn't very far from the magical beast zone. In reality, there was a certain way of doing things for those on the dragon list. The higher one's ranking was, the higher one's chance of staying close to the magical beast zone. Not only was it convenient for them, it also served as an intimidation factor towards those magical beasts. Not long after leaving the city, Su Luo had already been on the receiving end of the other's disdain. The girl by the name of Li Man Man glared at Su Luo with disdain, then hit Su Luo forcefully on purpose with her shoulder when she passed her by. She followed this up by wearing a scowl on her face, as if Su Luo owed her hundreds of thousands of points. Su Luo's eyes flashed in response to the nonsensical provocations Li Man Man was throwing her way, but she did not follow suit with any reaction of her own. She was no longer the age of a young girl who would bicker with others. However, the expression on Li Man Man's face became very long when she saw Su Luo ignoring all of her provocations. Stomping back over to Su Luo, she proceeded to give her a fierce glare. Su Luo coldly passed by her shoulder, but she was obstructed by Li Man Man from moving forward. Left with no other option, Su Luo sighed. "What do you want? Who are you exactly?" Li Man Man crossed her arms in a haughty manner while asking with a cold snort. "That's none of your concern." Su Luo gave a short and precise answer. "How is it not my concern? You are now living in Senior Brother Luo's home. Senior Brother Luo is now staying so close to you. What if you were to try to assassinate him? Therefore, for his safety, we need to know who you are." Li Man Man choked on her words for an instant before managing to come up with a reason. Luo Qing, Tian Meng, and Su Yinal looked to the sky, assassinating Senior Brother Luo. What a nonsensical reason this was. Su Luo smiled lightly. "You're stepping out of your bounds. Senior Brother Luo ordered you all to accompany me into the magical beast zone, not for you all to interrogate me." Li Man Man grew so mad as she stomped her feet. "Honestly, even if you don't tell me, I already know who you are. You are just a person from Midstream Mountain who is here to take the assessment. You are even worse than the worst person in the upstream mountain. What is there to be proud of? If not for that face of yours, why would Senior Brother Luo treat you this well?" Staring at Su Luo's incomparably beautiful face, Li Man Man seemed so consumed with jealousy that it seemed her entire body was in flames. That face truly made her feel so self-conscious that she felt like committing suicide. Su Luo tilted her head, and after some thought, she said without any hesitation or embarrassment, "Yes, I have this face, while you don't have any face at all. No wonder why Senior Brother Luo doesn't even recognize you." Li Man Man was practically hopping with rage. You need to be clear here. Right now, we are the ones helping you. And yet this is the attitude you show while asking for help." Shrugging her shoulders, Su Luo spread her arms and replied in a sly tone. "Senior Brother Luo was the one who asked you guys to help me. Therefore, in accordance with this, I'm the one who owes him a favor. If you want me to treat you with a good attitude, you should go ask for Senior Brother Luo for it. You are just relying on Senior Brother Luo's preferential treatment to you." Li Man Man yelled back in anger. "That's right, Senior Brother Luo treats me really well." Su Luo replied, as though she was agreeing to a fact. Li Man Man was so angry that she couldn't breathe. Being the deputy leader of the team, Luo Qing stepped forward and began to mediate the conflict when he saw the two girls starting to fight. Hey, everyone here's on the same side. We're going to stay together no matter what. So why are you guys fighting for? Stop fighting. All right, stop fighting. Li Man Man looked at her team deputy leader with tear-stricken eyes. Senior brother Luo Qing. She bullied me. Luo Qing felt his head start to ache. You claim to be bullied after losing to Su Luo in a verbal argument? If that were the case, many people would be bullying you. However, with her normally playing the role of the special junior sister within the group, her senior brothers would always pamper and indulge her. Therefore, Luo Qing rubbed her head. All right, you are older than Miss Su. So what's wrong with taking on more responsibilities? In truth, she was more than twice Su Luo's age, but senior brother Luo Qing would definitely not say such a cruel thing out loud. But when he reminded her of her age, Li Man Man had already exploded. Not only had senior brother Luo been taken away from her, her title of being the youngest and most pampered, this position had also been taken away by Su Luo. Seething with fury, she gave Luo Qing a vicious shove. All of you men are the same. As soon as you see her beauty, all of you just want to protect her, as if she were some kind of treasure, while treating me like some grass by the roadside. Su Luo. Exactly who had raised such a silly and naive girl up? Those people should really stand up and take responsibility for her. Su Luo stared at senior brother Luo Qing. Speechless, Luo Qing continued to pat his junior sister's shoulder. She is under the care of senior brother Luo. These words immediately brought about another conflict. That's because senior brother Luo's eyes have been blinded. He will soon see clearly who is the one that is truly good to him. Li Man Man was so mad that her face turned crimson red as she clenched tight her fists. After ridiculing senior brother Luo, she turned and started to ridicule Su Luo yet again. Look at her. She is only a 7-star commander rank, and all of you are helping her to get into the deepest parts of the magical beast zone? Isn't she just sending herself to death by going there? If we go in there, isn't it us who will have to protect her? She is such a big trouble, and she will only get in our way, and all she knows is how to annoy others. How annoying! Luo Qing looked at Su Luo apologetically, then again tried to convince his junior sister with a warm voice. She is still young. Having all these achievements as only a teenager, she definitely has a lot of potential. After a while, she will be stronger than us. Your expectations are just too high right now. Li Man Man had insulted Su Luo in order to establish a sense of superiority. But after Luo Qing explained, not only she didn't get a sense of superiority, she felt inferior to Su Luo. She couldn't accept this, that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.